Hey there, friends. Welcome. The Triarchy is back. The Triarchy is back. Say hello, everyone.
Although,
Hi.
I always the same thing happens when I say hello, everyone. It's like 80% Nettles, and there's a little bit of a Tim hello gets in there. But hello, friends. See, we're here at the Triarchy. We all bring different things to the table, as it were. So that's how we function. And of course, guys, the last two post game streams I have done by myself. So obviously, many people asking where are Tim and Nettles. Here we are. I basically this is an ADHD thing. It was a little too much going on for me to try to have a good discussion with these lovely folks and answer 500 super chats all at the same time. It was good, but it was kind of making my head pop, so I decided to just sort of have a discussion on a different day from just rapid fire answering the chats. So now the post game show is basically just me going through the questions, and then we are gathered here today, marriage, to talk about character arcs. Yeah, not marriage, character arcs. So this will be a character review. We're halfway here. We're obviously about to do the actor switch with many of the main characters, except for the olds, who will be the same, just more makeup and decrepit wigs and things like that. So I figured it'd be a good chance to come together and talk about where everyone has gone, where they have gotten so far in these 5 episodes. So much has happened. We are obviously doing a compressed storytelling where a lot is happening not only in the episodes but in between the episodes, in stark contrast to Rings of the Rings of Power Rings, which is kind of just crawling along slowly. Yeah, last episode kind of bummed me out, by the way. Kind of disappointing. But we're here to talk about House of the Dragon, which is moving very fast. So a lot has happened. We're going to go through the main characters, and we're going to ask where were they, where are they now, and how did they get from there to here. And that will lead us to their conflicts, their choices. We can talk about what they're trying to do, the mistakes they've made. That's kind of the axis here. What does each character want? What are they questing for? What is conflicting them? And what choices have they made that are potentially going to send them on a different path? So let us, real quick, Tim and Nettles, before we get into that even, I would give me your top line reaction from the last episode. What was it that struck you the most about this last episode with the awful wedding, Criston snapping, Damon and Criston both murdering people? Lots going on here. Yeah, Tim, why don't you give me first? What was your biggest takeaway from the episode?
I mean, it was good to see confirmation on what exactly it is that's set Criston Cole off and leads him down the path he'll take. Because I'm working on not saying spoilers, but from the
Appreciate
book.
that, Tim. Yes.
But I know I get overly excited about the book, and I do like to relate things back to the book. It's just because how the book is written, and because we're getting this choose our own adventure type deal with our 3 primary sources and not having to kind of make our own decisions on what's
We
real
could
and what's
definitely
happening.
compare Fire and Blood up to this point, as long as we just don't
Yeah.
get ahead of where the TV show is. So we can say,
And even though the show is its own, there's show canon and book canon, we're going to accept them as 2 different things. It is nice to see, okay, we are taking a direction. This is what happened, and we can definitely see, this is what led up to it, and we're given a nice linear progression of how it got to this point, and we can kind of take our look back on it and see, okay, this is where it started to happen. This is what caused it. And this is where we can start seeing the breakdown. And then we can kind of gleam a little bit of what's to come.
So did you see that Fabian Frankel has been interviewed a bunch this week? And he mentioned that his mom, I don't know if you guys have seen this, but his mom was like, oh, yeah, you could see that Criston was a bad guy because he hit Damon in the back in the tournament. So she actually went all the way back to that first episode to say, look, there was a clue that this guy was less than honorable. And that didn't even occur to me because the tournament was so exciting and Damon was playing dirty too. So I was just like, somebody gave Damon his comeuppance. But looking back, it was a little bit telling, wasn't it? Mm-hmm. Go ahead, Nettles.
No, yeah, that's crazy that his own mom said that. I thought the same thing. No, for me, what I got from the last episode was kind of just male fragility, males being emotional. It's funny because anytime it's time for a woman to take power, like Hillary Clinton becoming president, Rhaenyra becoming queen. The first thing they say is, "Oh, but women are emotional. What if she gets her period? What if she cries?"
Yeah, yeah.
And I love that this episode showed, like you said, both Damon and Criston being so emotional that they kill people. Like, Damon's like, oh, every time he's trying to get it on with Rhaenyra, the first thing his brother says is, go back to your wife, go back to your wife. And he's like, well, if I kill my wife, I won't have a wife for him to tell me to go back to. So we start the episode off with that. That's what I mean by like emotional. Like Damon wasn't emotional, like beating her, Rhea Royce or anything, but the decision to kill hers comes from an emotional place of wanting to be with Rhaenyra. That's what I mean. And then, of course, Criston, we see the opposite, which is instead of like that calculated, vindictive, emotional kill, it's that spur of the moment, full chaos and rage.
Which is so often what happens with repression, right?
With repression, exactly. Which society forces men to do by putting them into these boxes.
Right. So can I jump in? I pause you. You said several things that have got me going here. So we it's sometimes like people think about the patriarchy too often only in terms of its effect on women, but of course it has an effect on men too. And the pressure to be tough, to be a knight, to be made of metal, to be armored up all the time. Okay.
Yep.
This forces you or can force you to repress your emotions. So when they say women are more emotional, what we actually mean is that men in this society are repressing their emotions more to appear less emotional, but that's actually a more volatile person quite often, is the person who hasn't, because they haven't felt their emotions, are not in touch with them, or they don't know how to control them. And we have said many times that most of Damon's decisions are motivated by his personal feelings and desires. He's feeling slighted by Viserys. He wants to be more important. He lusts for Rhaenyra. Like, these are all very carnal emotions. He is a tactician at times, but most of his decisions come from a place of emotion. Wouldn't you agree, Tim?
Yeah, like Damon, for his part, is almost a form of malicious compliance, like how Nettles had said, like, go home to your wife. And then he could say, like, hey, technically I did. I went home. I went to my wife. She died, so that happened. Now, lately, like, I've been getting accused of being like a Damon defender and a Damon stan, which, look, I'm gonna be totally upfront. Damon's my, as far as House of the Dragon goes, Damon is my favorite character. Obviously, I named my fur baby after him, but I'm not in the way of defending Damon. Like, he straight up murdered his wife. Like, he committed those awesome crimes. That's why I'm wearing the big villain shirt. Like, I recognize Damon when he's being a villain and when he's not, but that's not to say I'm going to defend him when he's clearly doing bad things. Like, no, he murdered Rhea Royce. And we can't even say it was a mercy kill, because, like, when he reaches up and the horse freaks out. Now, I've been of the opinion that Damon, when he arrives on the Vale, obviously he rode Caraxes there, and we know that, like, horses freak out when they smell dragon, like we saw that in Game of Thrones. So it seemed like the horse freaked out probably because Damon smelled like Caraxes. But so when the horse freaks out and it falls over and Rhea Royce gets crushed underneath, and then Damon, like, steps on her arm, like, confirming that, oh yeah, she's paralyzed. He just walks away. Like, he was gonna leave her there to suffer until she says what she says about, I know you couldn't finish, and then that's when he grabs the rock. So it's like, it can't even be called a mercy kill on his part.
No,
because
definitely
he
not.
would have just left her there.
And a super chat, timely super chat. Thank you, Lavender Luna, asking questions about what we're talking about. Always helpful. I'm not entirely convinced Damon went to the Vale with the intent to hurt or kill Rhea. Well, they said after the episode that he didn't necessarily go there to do that. He went there to, he was ordered to go there. But probably he went there thinking eventually he'll find a chance to either annul their marriage or kill her. He went there, I would say, with the intent of freeing himself of the marriage, probably one way or the other. And the first time he ran into her, something happened. I do like the idea that the horse smelled the dragon stink, although, of course, the horse would have been able to smell it, as Minty, my fiance, who's familiar with horses, tells me, much sooner. The horses have very good sense of smell. They got the big nostrils. So potentially the horse should have been, like, restless as soon as Damon was anywhere near. But it's hard to know how much they're thinking about that. It was a little bit of a confusing scene, and I did say I felt it was a tad rushed. But then Damon does have good Grim Reaper symbolism. He doesn't speak. He's got the hood, Angel of Death style. So that was all pretty cool. But yeah. To get back to the fragility and the repression, obviously Criston Cole is the biggest example of this. And we see that in the conversation where he's impassionately asking Rhaenyra to be together with him, with Criston. I don't know if you guys saw my replay, but Minty caught that he's like pointing at himself the whole time. He's saying we and us and us and we, and he's like pointing at himself. But as soon as he gets rejected, you could see there's a immediate turn. He turns nasty. He turns upset. He's basically in tears. He's saying, oh, my whole reputation, this is the only way I could put it back together. And so you can see, like, yeah, I basically said that, you know, some Kingsguard can sort this out. They know more about how politics works. They can have a paramour on the side and not have it destroy their sense of self. But Criston, he identified with this vow so much that it was his identity. And once he broke his vow, all he can do is think about himself as this soiled knight. And he has to get out of that. He can't just continue to be a Kingsguard who's broken his vow. That is unthinkable for him. So yeah, it's a lot of repression, and obviously it does explode. And it's one of those things, it's well done because it seems sudden when it happens, but then you look back and you're like, okay, I can piece this together. So very cool. So let us start with King Viserys, because he's the king, and talk about, like I said, where was he when the show opened, and where is he now? It's one of the more dramatic before and afters. You know, the first we see Viserys, he's hosting the tournament, he's clapping and cheering, and everyone's happy for him, and he's about to have the son that he wants, and he's had the dream that's foretold he's going to have a son. And by episode 5, he's laid out in front of his own city, rotting, you know, and not making too many of his own choices. Mostly everything is brought to him. And so what would you guys say that Viserys' original conflict was? Where was, like, when the episode opened, episode 1, what is Viserys' conflict? It has something to do with needing an heir, right? And either one of you can jump in.
That's the first thing I was going to say. The only conflict, if you think about like the problems in his life, he has true love. He has a brother. He has a good job. So, you know, what are the things wrong with his life? Well, part of his job, let's say, whatever your job is, line cook, teacher, you know, as a teacher, you have to come up with a lesson plan. Well, as a king, you have to come up with an heir. So that when you die, this dynasty can continue. So I think that's his problem. It's not just like, oh, I need a child that has a penis. It's like, I need to complete my job, like my job qualifications, my job duties, type of thing.
And the additional conflict would have to do with Damon, wouldn't it, Tim?
Yeah, because by the precedent set by the Great Council of 101, without a son, then it is naturally assumed that Daemon would be the heir until Viserys can produce one. And Viserys is chafing against that, like the need for a son, and to continue the precedent that was set by how he got his role as king. Because if he were to change the rules at this point in time, because eventually he will when he names Rhaenyra the heir. But if he were to change it at this point in time, it would undermine how he became king because of the Great Council and how he beat out Rhaenys, at least what we're told by the vote. And I think going back even further, because like if we want to play like the blame game as to who is responsible for what happens, I take it all the way back to Jaehaerys.
Sure.
And how he became on the throne, because he had an older... Like, he was not a firstborn son. He was third, and he had an older sister. And for him to claim the throne after defeating Maegor meant bypassing his sister. So, like, this is a continuation of kings on the throne getting to their spot by bypassing older female relatives.
Correct. Yes. And then it's interesting that in the last episode, we saw Viserys go even further and say, when he's talking to Corlys, you know, he's saying the firstborn child of Rhaenyra and Laenor, regardless of gender, will be the next monarch. So he actually is, in the books it sounds more like they're trying to make an exception just for Rhaenyra. It's interesting that the Viserys is now saying, like, this is going to be the precedent from now on. The eldest child will take the throne. The other thing we need to know is Viserys intending this to apply to all the other houses and lords? Probably not, because that would be the most revolutionary act, which would essentially cause a lot of consternation. Like, every High Lord would be upset about that, or half of them that had older sisters, at least. But a lot of them would also feel like, I don't want to give my house to my daughter. I want to give it to my strong son who's got the muscles and swing the sword. That's we know it's gone at least as far as he intends this to be not just for Rhaenyra. And it really couldn't be. That wouldn't make any sense. He really does have to say that this is the new precedent going forward. So that's interesting. And one of the ways that I've been the hardest on Viserys is that if he wants to make this new revolutionary change and have his daughter be the first queen, like, you need to be setting that up. You need to be working extra hard. Like, anytime there's a succession, you should be setting up the heir to both know how to do the job and also to be respected by the High Lords. And we talked about this where Rhaenyra is pouring wine and not allowed to talk in the meeting, even though she's the heir. It's like, that's not a good setup. So we can see that Viserys, right from the beginning, he backs into this decision of making Rhaenyra the heir. And it is kind of touching when he's like, I've overlooked you, but I think actually you could be a good, queen, and you remind me of your mother, and I should have seen that earlier. That felt real. But then he hasn't done a good job of setting up the support for Rhaenyra. So that is one of the shakiest things that we've got going. So his original conflict is this question of the succession. He's got an unreliable brother who nobody really wants to be king, and then he's got a daughter. And so it moves from Daemon to Rhaenyra, but it's still not settled really, because, of course, as soon as Emma dies, everyone wants him to remarry, and like, oh, well, you got to make more heirs. And that's one of those ones where Viserys should have thought about that a little harder. It's like, but if I make male heirs with a different woman, I could be setting up a succession crisis. Mm-hmm. And it doesn't occur to him.
No, and I mean, I understand the need for additional heirs because life is so uncertain and you can't put all your eggs in one basket. But it definitely is something that Viserys needed to take into consideration that he didn't, which is, okay, I can have more kids, so I have my spares, but if all of them live to adulthood, then what he needed to do was have multiple heirs so that there's always someone there to take the throne, but he also needed to make sure that they got along and respected the role of whichever one was going to inherit it, but still also be able to assure the other children, like, yay, but you're not going to be king, you're not going to be queen, but you're going to get something out of this. Like, that's the problem with this firstborn take-all thing, is that second and third children then are left to carve their way out, and that's how you end up with your Otto Hightowers.
Go ahead, Nettles. I'll be back in 30 seconds.
Okay. I mean, I was just going to kind of say, just going back all the way to the beginning, that when we were talking about what are Viserys' obstacles, and someone said, like, I think it was you, David, that said that it was his relationship with Damon, but I don't see that. I don't think that Damon is a problem or an obstacle for Viserys at all. Like, if you use your imagination and take Otto out of the equation, like, let's pretend Otto was never born. He doesn't exist. Let's pretend that there's someone else who's Hand of the King, who has the personality of Ned Stark, someone who's just morally good, okay? Mm. Is Damon a problem for Viserys? My answer is no. So I didn't mean that
Damon was a problem, more like his relationship with Damon is a problem, which is, to your point, mostly because Otto is successfully driving a wedge. I'm not saying that Damon is a problem for Viserys. I'm saying his fragmented relationship with his brother is a problem because Viserys doesn't have dragons. Damon is his best dragon lord, but he's not keeping him, like, as his strong right hand. He's got this distance. I'm saying that's kind of one of his original conflicts.
Yeah. So I would actually want to say that Viserys's conflicts in the beginning is Otto and him trying to complete his job duties. to 2 obstacles keeping him from successfully being a king.
Yeah, and one thing that's I'd like to get you guys' reaction to is the statement, the part in the last episode where he's sitting there, laying back, dying in front of his Valerian city. And he says, there's part of me that wishes I had been tested. If I had been, tested like Aegon the Conqueror, maybe the fires would have forged something different. And then he says, oh, well, it's better not to know, I guess. So I picked up on the idea that, A, he's cowardly to come to that, oh, it's better not to know conclusion. But the main thing is that he's missing the fact that he is being tested because he's only thinking about being tested as like armed conflict. And instead, he has something much more subtle and insidious happening on his watch, and he doesn't even see it as a test. So this is like just show you how little he is understanding what's going on, right?
Yes, he is being tested. That's crazy that he doesn't think that. It's funny, that's how it is in life. Like, you might be going through something and you're thinking of it in the moment. When you think about it afterwards, like when you think about it in retrospect, like that conflict changed the trajectory of your life. Like, he's sitting here thinking like, oh, I haven't been tested. But bitch, this conflict is going to banish dragons from the world.
Yeah, to really
Like,
to be sitting there and say like I haven't been tested, and it's like, dude, look at your arm, and there's you are being tested.
Yeah, as part of me wishes something had gone wrong, but everything's just so perfect. I can't, I just can't think of anything.
Like, oh, is that another finger? Did that just fall off? Oh well.
What was that sound? Oh, that was your hand falling off at the wrist. Anyways, yeah.
Just another example of A Song of Ice and Fire being so relatable to everyday life. It's like, you never know, like, what you're going through is going to echo throughout the rest of your life.
That meme of the dog sitting at the kitchen table while everything's on fire. Like, this is fine. Yeah. That's Viserys in the moment.
No, but you're actually right, Nettles. That does happen often, where because we miss what's going on in front of us because we're thinking about something else. We're thinking about, I'm supposed to be doing this with my life, and so we're missing these opportunities that are right in front of us. So I know what career I want to have, so I'm missing this other opportunity that I could have. So yeah, that's very much what's going on with Viserys. He's looking for war, and it's all wrapped up, I feel like, in his uncomfortableness with the Targaryen nature. The dragons are what made them kings, and he doesn't have a dragon and thinks that people really shouldn't have dragons. So that tension is like he's always thinking about his weakness in terms of, I don't have a dragon and I'm not a warrior. But he should be thinking about the politics because that's actually where he's being challenged. So, yep.
And that's his job.
It is his job. It is his job to be the decider, as I joked early on. And he's just like, why does all this politics always follow me everywhere? It's like, it's literally the center of the politics, buddy. So,
I mean, for Viserys' part, he's the 5th Targaryen king, and he's coming off of 4 who all went through a period of war. Aegon the Conqueror, Aenys and Maegor, and then Jaehaerys, who's the beginning of his reign, starts with defeating Maegor. But then he's completely forgetting that Jaehaerys' 50-plus years of prosperity, war was a very small part. Like, in the beginning, what led to his 50 years of success was being amicable and playing politics. So it's like, but he's so focused on the war aspect.
Yeah, he mixed in.
It was a series.
Go ahead.
I was going to say, it was a series of good decisions that set Jaehaerys up for that prosperous reign.
Yeah, and there was just enough show of force here and there. They put Maegor down, obviously. Maegor and his remnant forces, and they cleaned that up. And then there was the war in the Stepstones. But mostly it was the conciliation with the faith and, his good governance. But, there are several times when Jaehaerys does either make a threat or show his dragon. Just to be like, oh, yeah, that's right. He does have a dragon. So maybe we'll go back to his negotiating, efforts. That was actually better. So Viserys does not have that stick because he doesn't have a tight relationship with Daemon. If he did have Daemon as his right-hand man and people looked at Daemon as a true extension of Viserys, then that would have functioned the same way. But
Yeah,
he
so
allows
family-
Otto to drive the wedge, and he allows his discomfort with dragons and their restless, chaotic nature or whatever to just never, feel comfortable with giving Daemon enough responsibility. And ironically, if he had put more on Daemon's plate, probably would have made a better man out of Daemon as well, potentially. But so do you guys want to go ahead? Oh, sorry. Go ahead. Please respond.
I was just gonna say, there's that Teddy Roosevelt line about walk softly but carry a big stick, and Viserys doesn't have that because he never claimed another dragon.
Well, he carries a big stick, but he doesn't ever.
He carries Blackfire.
He doesn't ever swing it at anyone. So yeah,
No.
just a walking stick.
Viserys, most people will probably say that he doesn't have a big character arc because, like, he hasn't, gone from war, like, Theon to Reek or, Jamie. But he has, even in these 5 episodes, he has changed a lot to me. Or his maybe not his personality, but his circumstances have changed. We see episode 1, he's in an equal... I'm just gonna let me just have my own headcanon. Please, guys, in the in the comment section, don't argue with me. Let's just say that he's in a loving relationship.
The don't argue with Nettles light is on. Go ahead.
Nettles, did you freeze again?
I'm moving around. Okay.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so he starts off episode 1. He's like in an equal, loving relationship with Emma. They're around the same age. The way she looks at him, reaches for him. This is like a healthy type relationship that everyone wants. Fast forward to last week's episode. Now he has a new bride with Alicent, who flinches at his touch, who like hates to be called in the middle of the night to service him. So that's completely different. Then we have his relationship with his daughter. Episode 1, Rhaenyra is the realm's delight. This is like every parent's dream, is to look down and see that you have a kid who's healthy, who, has 10 fingers, 10 toes, smart. The realm's delight. What bad thing can he say about Rhaenyra? Nothing. She's perfect. She's fierce. She's a dragon rider. Fast forward to now, he has a dad's worst fear about his darling daughter. She's a hoe. She's been causing problems. They don't even talk. They have like the worst father-daughter relationship. And then now let's look at Damon. Episode 1, it was kind of just like, oh, this is my jock of a brother, the football player brother. Like, he's just a little bit of a threat. Fast forward to last episode. Now Damon is full-blown war veteran.
He's been banished twice and returned.
Yes.
Yeah, so...
He's that drunk uncle at Christmas with a beer belly who's like, I've seen, come back from Vietnam, who's hitting everybody. Because it's like because he has changed so much. So, of course, Viserys and Daemon's relationship has changed. So I feel like every single thing in Viserys' life, from his individual relationships to his health, his sanity, and his grasp on the realm, has 180'd.
Yeah, it's all slipping away from him. It's all deteriorating. It's all cracking. It's all rotten and corrupted, just like his broken body. I've made the joke, instead of the Fisher King, he's the Fissure King.
Fissure.
Yeah. Boom. But the other thing I would add to that, Nettles, and I agree with all that. And obviously, when you say hoe, you're spelling it Heaux. Just to be clear.
Yes. Fancy way.
Viserys is also losing his faith. He's losing his religion. That's him in the corner. He began with this strong conviction on his dream and his son, and now we see that's shaken by the thing with Emma, the thing where his wife was, that whole thing. And then we see him, that really telling scene where he's drunk at the campfire. And then he's kind of just, lurching a little bit. I had this dream, and I don't know if it was right. I might have been wrong, Alicent. And she's all like, let's go to bed. And he's like, no, I got something to say.
More.
And so we see that losing his religion. He's, used to believe, he's not sure anymore. Is it Rhaenyra? Could it be his new son? He doesn't know. And so that's a very different from the strong conviction that we saw in episode 1, where he's leaning in on the bathtub. He's like, I'm certain it's going to be a son. I know, I had this dream. So we know that Viserys does believe in the dreams, and we also heard him say, oh, Dragon Rider, blah. Only a few Targaryens have been able to dream. So this is something he takes pride in. It's a core of his identity. So for him to lose faith in that is a major crumbling of something that was a foundation of his sense of self, as far as being I'm King Viserys. Why am I here? I'm the prophetic dreamer. I can see the future, and that is disappearing. Tim, your thoughts?
Yes.
I've said like multiple times, the problem with the prophecy in these dreams is that everyone who has them, for the most part, wants also to be the one that the dream is about, or to be at least somewhat playing a huge role in it. And Viserys is making the same mistake in that role, in the same way that Rhaegar did.
Yes.
Rhaegar thought it was him, then he thought it was his son. Aegon the Conqueror, for the dream that we now know he has, he believes that he needs to set something in motion, only for that to come crashing down when he's unable to bring Dorne into the fold. Nobody really wants to set back and take a real big step back, analyze the dream and say like, okay, what is this? Where is it? And how certain am I of this? He has it. He says, no, it's my son, like the king born wearing a crown. And it's like, but is he? Are you sure it's not a grandson? Are you sure it's not a great-grandson? Are you sure it's not someone who could potentially be hundreds of years down the line? Because that's the tricky thing about prophecy. Like, even going all the way back to Daenerys the Dreamer and her prophecy, the doom did happen eventually, but it took a couple of years. Like, it didn't happen the very next day. They were on Dragonstone for a bit before it finally happened. So
12 years, yeah. I was joking about that. Like, how much side-eye were Daenerys and Aenar getting from their other family members? Like, really? We moved away from Valyria? Like, was something supposed to happen? Yeah. And, of course, Rhaegar, we know Aemon talked about Rhaegar. First, he thought it was him. Then he thought it was his son. So, yeah, I think of Rhaegar often when we're looking at Viserys wrestle with the prophecy, as I think we're supposed to,
Yeah. And it's just the point of, like, we don't know when these prophecies will come to fruition, if they'll ever come to fruition. Like, you might be sitting at that bus stop for a while before your ride shows up. And that's like what Viserys is dealing with.
Yeah, and I had just real quick to argue with somebody in the chat. Damon's absolutely a murderer. Yes, he is. Yes.
Of course.
Yes.
Yeah.
There's no, okay. Yeah.
I'm a huge Damon fan, and I'll say he straight up murdered her.
Yeah, I was going to say earlier, in response to what you said earlier, Tim, about liking characters who do bad things. Obviously, fortunately for you, almost everyone in the chat is an adult, understands that enjoying a character is not the same as endorsing their actions. So
exactly.
Yeah.
So let's go ahead and switch to Daemon, since we're already mentioning Daemon, and he's Viserys' brother. Where did Daemon start? Daemon started off as the rogue prince, cheered by the people. He shows up to the joust and everyone's cheering for him. Although everyone groaned when he did the sour move of tripping the other horse with his lance, which I thought was a little heavy-handed as far as the character moment. But whatever. Obviously, Daemon doesn't care about the rules. That we know is true. But he's starting off. What's his original conflict? His original conflict is that he's mad about his brother not giving him enough responsibility and sort of pushing him off to the side, right?
Yeah, he's mad about his role and how he's not being used where his talents really lay. Like he says to Viserys, like, why didn't you make me your hand of the king?
I don't know if it's as specific as that. I think it's more of like a general restlessness. Like, I just feel like that's just Damon doesn't have purpose. Imagine having all this chaotic energy inside of you, having brains, the muscle, the dragon. Like, you have everything and you can't use it. You're just sitting there, a storm of all this talent. So it's like sitting there brimming with him, and he's just looking around. He can't do anything with it. I think if he was born into a family of carpenters, he would have found a way to beef with his older brother about, I make better tables than you, or I make better chairs. It just so happens that his family is the royal family. So of course he's going to find, conflict within the small council, and, starting wars, and, bigger scale than what we would be, subject to. But I just feel like it's not something specific that's wrong with Damon. It's just that chaotic energy where I have.
Well, I
all
think
these
those
tasks.
ideas go together. Like, I totally agree with you that he needs a war to fight. Like, he needs something to do. He's kind of like my birds.
Someone to love.
They need my birds always need stuff to destroy and chew on. Otherwise, they're going to find something that I don't want them to destroy and chew on. So, Damon needs a chew toy. And he got the stepstones. That lasted him a little while, and you can see he did, pretty well. He won the war at least. But at the same time, that restlessness and loneliness is exacerbated by the fact that Viserys isn't giving him the most important tasks, but constantly sending him away. So those two things are
listening to Otto. Viserys is like that's what I said. If you eliminate Otto, Damon is hand of the king.
Probably so. And I think that was one of Viserys' first mistakes. Yeah.
And we get that because Viserys even says when he finally talks back to Otto, you told he was master of coin, you said he was a spendthrift. He was master of law, you said he was a tyrant. That he becomes captain of the city watch. He excels in it. Hard-handed.
There's no more crime.
Heavy-handed, yes. We'll definitely say he's heavy-handed in his role as captain of the city watch. But still, it's Otto Hightower is never happy no matter what Daemon does. I made that joke. Daemon Targaryen breathed, and Otto Hightower took that personally.
It's true. It's true. And that's the main thing that Otto gets blamed for. There are some instances, and I'll give this right back to you, Tim, where you can say Otto might be thinking of the realm first and this and that, but very clearly he's thinking of his own desires and comforts first when he's trying to get Daemon ousted. He just doesn't like Daemon, Yeah. I mean, straight up. Come here, girl.
So fast forward to our last episode. I feel like Daemon, I'm not going to say he finds fulfillment. No. His arc isn't even a tenth of the way complete yet. But I feel like he's on this journey where he kind of is at peace with himself, and he's at peace with the fact that his life is going to be chaotic. But I think he's onto something once he sees that Rhaenyra has changed in the way of becoming a woman and becoming ripe. So I think now he's on.
Can I pause you real quick?
Yeah.
Hold that thought that on the Damon and Rhaenyra part. Just real quick, Melissa Moore in the chat, a great follow-up to what we just said, saying that Viserys and Daemon could have been like Oberyn and Doran Martell, right? Remember, Doran Martell is the strategic guy. Oberyn's obviously Oberyn and Daemon are very similar, okay? A better version of Daemon could have been more like Oberyn, but Oberyn, you can see, works with his older brother, and they use their opposite strengths and abilities to complement each other. So that's a very good model for what they could have been like. So good job, Melissa Moore. But back to Damon and Rhaenyra. Nettles, go ahead.
No, yeah, I think Damon, like I said, he has his dragon. He had his position in the council. He was that war hero. So he's marking off all these checks. So now I think he's at the point where he's realizing that I think my fulfillment will be in the softer parts of my life and trying to find my true love. So I feel like compared to episode 1, now we're seeing Damon at a place where his next goal isn't these manly feats of power, but more like self-fulfillment. So that's
I do think that's right. The Stepstones thing is as much proving something to himself almost as to Viserys, I feel like,
Yeah. But I also feel like it was hollow, which is why he quickly went on to all right, that was fun. What else? What else we got going on?
That kind of earned him a ticket back to court. It gave him the cachet to stroll back into King's Landing and be like, "Yep, I deserve to be here. You can't send me away. I'm important. Look at me."
Yeah.
So, which he is. He is important. He's one of only the handful of dragon riders for a Targaryen king whose claim to power is based on dragon power. So yeah, he is important. Now, to build on what you said, Nettles, where has he come? So he's shifted his goals from sort of being more important in the eyes of his brother to Rhaenyra. Basically, his goal now is Rhaenyra, it seems like. And it's sort of a perfect wrapping up of everything Daemon wants. He wants power. He wants prestige. He wants
to hit things.
He wants a mate that is his equal. You know, he's always dating these. I went through in the Damon's ladies, like he dates witch women and dragon rider women. Like he's looking for people that are up to his level. And you see with Mysaria speaks to him as an equal in that first episode and in subsequent episodes in a way that nobody else does. So that's something that Damon is looking for, and he basically can see all of that in Rhaenyra. So it's a little bit grooming. It's a little bit uncle-niece affection. It's a little bit, oh, these people are actually destined for each other. They're made of the same chaotic dragon stuff, and it's all wrapped up. So that does seem to be increasingly a part of his thinking. But then, of course, we also saw him dancing with Laena, and we know from the previews of the next episode that he's going to get together with Laena. So I said no spoilers, guys, but that's the preview of the next week's episode. I'm not really considering a spoiler. It's airing tomorrow. So for those of you who just found out that Damon and Laena are going to be married when the episode begins tomorrow, I apologize, but I don't really consider that to be too much of a spoiler. So the thing is, but let's set the Laena thing aside because that really hasn't happened yet. As this picture shows right below Nettles here, you can see Damon and Rhaenyra in the middle of the dance floor. At Rhaenyra's wedding to Laenor, the Damon and Rhaenyra thing is still going hot and heavy. So, thoughts?
No, yeah. Just piggybacking just some more off just this one simple thing is this episode shows Damon's relationship with Royce, his relationship with Rhaenyra, and his starting a relationship with Laena all in one episode. So that's what I'm saying. Like when I say that Damon's focus has shifted from martial prowess to prowess in the sheets, that's what I'm talking about.
Yeah, and because Damon's fractured relationship with Royce is because of the very fact that it was a political marriage, not one of his own choosing. And I'm not sure if there was a way for them to ever reconcile given their personalities. Like maybe he could have come around on her. I don't know, because we don't know. We're not given that background on like, did they, so to know whether they even ever had a chance. Like I kind of remember that line about where in original Game of Thrones, Robert and Cersei, when they were saying like, Robert says like, I wonder what's holding all together. And they have that thing about our marriage. And then they both laugh. But then Cersei really does ask like, do you think there was ever any hope for us? I kind of get the same feeling with Damon and Rhea. Like, do you think there was ever a chance that we could have made it work?
No. I think Rhea is gay.
I mean, there's been many tweets on that topic. I will say, it's obviously it's just one of those things where you're just reading a vibe from somebody, but yeah,
you just have to make it up in your head. That's what I did. Nothing. I just made it up in my head just to make it make sense. Because I'm like, how could you not like Damon? Rhea and Damon just seem to have that energy that you think that they would get along. Like he likes strong women. This woman's strong. So it must be that she was like, no, I'm not having it.
Yeah, it could be that they just like argued the first time they met and just, strong personalities that just hit it off wrong. Damon also has an aspect of wanting to dominate strong women though too. Like Rhaenyra's younger. Mysaria doesn't have anywhere near the social status he does.
Okay.
We'll see what happens in the future, but that potentially was a factor in the brothel scene, for example, when Rhaenyra turned the tables and started acting as the aggressor. That took Damon out of his thing a little bit. So, and a little bit also, we see that on the dance floor where he's trying to be this dangerous, roguish guy, and Rhaenyra just calls him on it. Like, well, go ahead then. Cut your way through the Kingsguard and throw me over your shoulder and take me to Dragonstone. Make me your queen. Do it. And so he's always caught in this moment of like, oh, it was fun to threaten that I was going to do something, but now am I actually going to follow through with it? Sometimes
he does.
Yeah. Sometimes he does.
Like, he likes a dominant woman up until they dominate him, and then he has to pull back and say, wait, that's illegal.
So right. And there's just no part of Rhea that was going to be dominated at all. She was obviously, do you want, I'm going riding by myself. It's like, she didn't have a lot of lines, but she was obviously not somebody who was ever going to give an inch on anything. So, yep, didn't hit it off.
Oh, well.
And yeah, do you think Damon gives off Loki vibes? Of course. Damon and Rhaenyra are the blood of the dragon. They're restless and chaotic. So, yeah, Loki is the chaos agent. All right, so what else? The closing thoughts on Damon, and specifically where he's gotten himself to. He just sort of keeps getting exiled and coming back and causing trouble, and getting exiled and coming back and causing trouble. Do we think that he's going to change it all after this 9-year time gap? Is he going to be more grown up, maybe?
Yeah, like I said, I think we're going to see rom-com, like romance comedy Damon for a while. He, like, the stepstones as the last bit of action we're going to see. Now he's going to be father figure. Now he's going to be, you know, I got the funny quips, I'm the reasonable uncle, until it's needed again for him to pull out Dark Sister. But yeah, that's just where I think he's at, where it's just like, that's, like I said, that's just, Song of Ice and Fire is us in our real life, right? Like, you're in high school, then you go to college, and you're like, your parents aren't there, so you go wild, and you're crazy, and you're fucking everything, and you're drinking, and you're testing your limits, and then you're like, well, that was fun. Now let me find someone to get married to.
Yeah, and
right?
the ages are important, too. Damon's like 31, 32 as of episode 5. So when we come back, he's going to be about 40. And I can tell you, as someone who's about 40, that there's a big difference between 30 and 40, especially for learning about yourself. You know, the end of your 30s is kind of the last gasp of just acting irresponsibly and not the end of your 30s, the end of your 20s, I should say, is about, 27 is actually an age a lot of people put a pin on, is say after 27, you're fully an adult, thinking like an adult. For ADHD people, it's a little slower. So for me, I'd say mid-30s, there was a transition for me. But Damon should be a little more settled and not as restless, if you will, at the age of 40 as he was 31.
Yeah, but 30 is the new 20. Actually, for me, at the age of 27, I thought I'd be dead because I thought I'd be in the 27 club. I'm glad I'm not.
Well, but 27...
I was just about to bring up the 27 club. Like, I think that's why people apply such significance to 27.
Well, but that's the kind of thing is like, it's about the age where you're like, okay, I kind of was trying to destroy myself in my reckless youth. I'm still here now. So what do I want to do with my life? I think a lot of people do find themselves somewhere between 25 and 35 with that sort of, some version of that. So we'll see. Yeah. We'll see what Damon comes back with, some more dad energy, I think
Damon is just going to be like less and less chaotic. And now we're just going to be seeing him just being maybe more of that hand of the king person that does have all the great ideas. Like, you go to him for advice. He's seen some shit.
So we will, I'll look forward to that because we've gotten a lot of very rogue Damon. If he's a gray character, it's a very dark shade of gray. So maybe we'll see some other notes. Real quickly, let me just catch up with a couple super chats. Gavin says, Squish, remember, I'm waiting until the whole season is out before I start watching, but I'm excited to binge all your videos after the show. Cool. I don't know what you're doing here. Get spoiled. But, yeah, binging this show is going to be hard. It's not that bingeable of a show because so much happens in each episode. I'm curious to see how that would go for somebody. But Lavender Luna says, I already read that one. Lamprey Pie, what's your take on the Strong family's motives? Are they acting, plotting as a team? That's a very interesting question. We will talk about the Strongs today, so put a pin in that. Liam, very seldom does deviation in series movie canon from literature canon result in success. Every deviation in House of the Dragon thus far has increased the entertainment. My faith has been restored after Game of Thrones Season 8. Well, a couple thoughts here. I agree mostly. I think they're doing wonders with the source material. But I think the formula here is important. The source material is threadbare. And it gives a lot of wiggle room. And us readers aren't overly attached to the intricate details of these scenes and dialogue because they're not there. So this is a much better recipe for creating a television adaptation of a book. And Fire and Blood is almost like a storyboard for a TV show. It's about that level of detail. So Yeah, it is working great. I do think it's really impressive what they've done with some stuff in Fire and Blood that's maybe 1 or 2 lines. Like Emma Arryn literally is a paragraph.
Right?
Okay, and they did a lot with that, I think we can say. So over and over we see that. Criston too. Criston's we're left to wonder what the hell is going on with him. We only see the actions from the outside. And so they've developed a very personal story here which explains those actions marvelously. So yeah, I agree with that super chat, and I think they're knocking it out of the park. What do you think, guys?
No, yeah. Thank you for the super chats. You guys say
Like I love what they're I love what they're doing with it, because like for those who haven't read the book, like there was another stream someone had asked, like, do you think it's worth reading House of the Dragon? Now, I mean, do you think it's worth reading Fire and Blood? Now, it's not necessary to enjoy the show, but me personally, me personally, I'm always going to encourage people to read the books. I'm always going to encourage people to read in general. But the thing about Fire and Blood is, like, the way it's written, George is writing it in a very specific way because it's a framing device. It's a story within a story. We have the book written by George, but we have the story written by an archmaester. So that's already coming in with its own set of biases and agendas. And then when you get to the chapters on the Dance of the Dragons, it's this already biased source, so an unreliable narrator at best, citing 3 conflicting sources, 3 primary sources, each all with their own agenda, because it's another maester, a Septon, who's going to be arguing things from the faith, and then Mushroom. And Mushroom, as much as I love Mushroom, I can recognize that Mushroom's more in it for telling a lewd story than he is for telling the truth. So it very is like you're very much left to decide what you believe are the real facts that what really went down. You kind of got to draw your own conclusion. And that's what the show is left to work with, is since they can't do a choose your own adventure thing, they have to kind of say, like, okay, well, this is what happened. This is and it's great seeing like what they're doing. Sometimes, like, okay, we can look back and say Mushroom was right, or Septon or Eustace was right, or Melos was right, or anything else. And then other times it's like, okay, well, they got it half right, but then things kind of went different the way he said it.
And they're also even doing just a little bit of leaving a few things unknown. Like, we don't know how the scuffle started. We don't know exactly how Damon said air for a day. There's a few moments where they are leaving us, and I'm sure Nettles will be right back. There's a few moments where they are leaving some things ambiguous. And I think that's just to give us a little bit more immersion in the world, because all the characters in the story don't know exactly. Like, we didn't know exactly how far Viserys and Alicent's relationship was progressing behind closed doors. They decided not to really show us that. They gave us a couple of scenes, but we don't see them kissing. We see something happening there. There's obviously something developing, but we're left to wonder how far it's gone. So that moment when Viserys says, "I'm marrying Alicent," it kind of surprises us, just as it surprises most of the people in the room. So I do like how they're mixing in a little bit of that fog. Yeah?
Yeah. And I like how they're sticking true to life, which is that sometimes, like how you have your good days and your bad, not everything's going to be picture perfect. Not everything's going to be pristine. Like, we can see there are times where Viserys and Alicent are getting along well. Like, you actually get a general sense that in the beginning that Viserys loved his conversations with Alicent. He liked the time, and that there was kind of a mutual thing where Alicent maybe if she never loved Viserys, she at least liked the man. But then over time, then there's other times where it's like you look at your significant other and you wonder why you got with them in the first place. Like, it changes. It's very true to life. Like, not you have your ups and your downs, your good days and your bad, and you have to take the good with the bad. And that's why, like, I try not to begrudge Alicent too much, especially with like the scene that we got in the very sex-filled episode of, like, can you blame her for when she gets called to Viserys's bedroom? Like, if she's not attracted to him, she's obviously not in the mood for it. And But that's not to say that there can't be other times where things are really well, and maybe she would be more receptive. I think like it's we're all we're left with is what happened in that moment, but we're not seeing every moment.
Welcome back, Nettles. The Maester's
Thanks.
apparently some gray rats chewing at your cables.
It's horrible. I get no respect. But are we on Alicent now?
No,
I mentioned her.
no, we're not talking about Alicent at all. Actually, we were talking about Mushroom. Yeah, Mushroom.
Mushroom.
Very important character arc, Mushroom. No, we were. Let's put a pin in that though, because I do want to go to a proper Alicent discussion. We were doing Damon. Are we pretty much done with Damon? I think
I
so.
think we can move to the next.
Okay, so I guess, well, let's go ahead and talk about Alicent since you broached the topic. I was going to go with the olds first, and then work our way to the youngs, but it doesn't really matter. So here's something. So here's what I gave a little baby thought in my last stream that I would like to throw out as an entry into this. Alicent and Rhaenyra. They've made a change for this. One of the biggest change, maybe the biggest one, is Alicent and Rhaenyra being the same age and being bestest friends. They were not bestest friends in the books. Alicent was more of a stepmother. There was 7-9 years between them, something like that. And it was said that they were friendly for a couple of years, but it was more of a like, Alicent called her daughter and Rhaenyra, you know what I mean? Like, it wasn't best friends. So they've made this change. I do like the change, because these two characters, as we can see by episode 5, they are becoming rivals. Now, the thing that I want to throw out is that before we go to pinpointing the actions by Alicent or Rhaenyra that frayed their friendship, and the actions by other people that frayed their friendship, I think I want to recognize the idea that these two started out as friends, and that circumstances have pulled them apart. Now, we know that obviously they're very different people. Alicent's the rule follower. Rhaenyra is the rebel. Alicent is internalizing the political system and its values. Rhaenyra is chafing against it. And that is part of the reason why they grow apart. However, again, Oberyn and Doran, we can see that people that have opposite traits can make a very good team. But they don't make a good team. They're pulled apart. And I think this is part of the tragedy, is that the system is really what is pulling them apart. We see that Otto is constantly pouring poison in Alicent's ear, trying to drive away any idea that her kids and Rhaenyra's kids could get along, and that this could be some sort of thing that doesn't turn into bloodshed. From the beginning, Otto has been telling her, you need to prepare Aegon. If Rhaenyra takes the throne, the knives will come out, and my knife will be the first one to come out. Obviously,
Right.
very hypocritical, self-fulfilling prophecy there. But Rhaenys, as I pointed out, also sees that Rhaenyra's claim will be challenged, and any fool can see that Viserys and Rhaenyra aren't doing a good job of setting up Rhaenyra for success. So, the way I want to approach this is just like I said, first and foremost, it's a tragedy that these two best friends have been pulled apart. They weren't able to use their strengths to maybe combine forces to stay a team, because if they had stayed firmly with each other, if they had shared all of their secrets with each other, if Alicent had confided in Rhaenyra that they are trying to force her into Viserys' lap, so to speak, if Rhaenyra had been able to confide to Alicent about what really happened, maybe they could have, with Damon in that night in King's Landing, maybe they could have worked as a team to work against this patriarchy. But instead, they're being pulled apart by it. And it is, to me, very sad and tragic. So obviously we're going to go with each character and show where mistakes that they've made and decisions they've made. But I do think that before we blame anyone individually, especially Rhaenyra or Alicent, like, it is sad that their friendship has been essentially attacked by the political realities and people like Otto and Damon that are just pouring thoughts and ideas into these girls' ears and that have lots of ripple effects. So what do you guys think about that?
Definitely agree that you have to be thinking about all that stuff at the same time when you think about Alicent. As far as like, for me though, for Alicent, like where she's gone from episode 1 to this last episode is like, she's literally gone from a schoolgirl to a soccer mom. And that is like one of the biggest changes that a woman can go through when you're like a schoolgirl And schoolgirl for me is synonymous with dreamer. Being a schoolgirl is not the plaid Britney Spears outfit. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about being a schoolgirl as far as like having your whole life ahead of you and having these dreams and having these options.
Mm.
And like every single thing in your future is a maybe or a why not or I hope so. Nothing is set in stone yet. Now, this last episode, Alicent is someone completely different. She's not a dreamer. Stuff is set in stone. She is married now. She does have kids. She does have job duties and people that depend on her, and all that going on that comes along with being a mom. So I just feel like just being a mom makes you a different person. Biologically, you have different hormones, different things firing off in your brain that are telling you to protect someone else. So I really feel like maybe Alicent might have had the biggest character arc until now because she literally has different DNA shooting off messages in her brain because of her pregnancies. But I really do think that's different. What I'm trying to say is that Alicent has gone from someone who's had all the possibilities in front of her to being someone stuck in a story that was written for her.
That's a great way to put it. Tim, go ahead.
I'm a big fan of Grey Area and Direwolf City, and I think it was one of them. I think it was they characterized Alicent as like a girl who got pregnant and married straight out of high school while all their friends went off to college and had life experience. And I was like, yeah, that seems. And now they're and now they're like making passive aggressive posts on Facebook. And I was like, yeah, Alicent as she is like quotes. Now. Yeah, Alicent as she is now. Alicent's the type of woman who would have live, laugh, love posters all over her house and down a bottle of red wine a day. Like she's that mom.
Tim, hold on, Tim. She's got the footsteps. You know, there's two sets of footsteps and then one. That's where Jesus carried me. I mean, that shit's in her bathroom. I'm pretty sure. But go ahead. Now, great points, guys. That's exactly what's happened. And Nettles, what you said not only is like it just changes you to be looking out for small humans. A single person, I make my own choices. Maybe I'm responsible for like my house's honor or something. Two, there are small humans that need me to feed them constantly. That changes it. Man or woman, that changes you. So yeah, I agree that she's had the biggest arc too. Tim, I sort of interrupted you. Sorry, go ahead, buddy.
I was gonna say, like, as much as I like joke about that, like what I just said, I don't begrudge Alicent because, like, had Nettles had pointed, this was someone who kind of had like the whole world set before them because of their station. Like, you're the daughter of the hand of the king. You're daughter of the hand of the second most powerful person in the realm. Like, the possibilities, maybe not endless like they were for Rhaenyra, but they were very, very good, very much better than most people. But she got forced into this position. Hey, Damon. She got forced into this position by her father. And I mean, I'll talk more about that when we get to Otto Hightower and his role in things, but it very much is like someone who had their future snatched away from them on the whims of their father because of his ambition.
Yeah. I said this on something else, but I was talking about how like it's hard to be mad at Alicent because Alicent reminds me, because I was Alicent. Oh, wow. You guys, surprise. I was Alicent. I thought that, like, if I didn't have sex until I was married, and if I did my community service, and if I helped the old lady cross the street, and I studied, and I obeyed my mom, you know, that I would get the white picket fence and the good job and just all this good karma and all this good stuff would come to me.
Very interesting. This is very interesting, Nettles. Go on with your confession here.
I think that's the lore that all of us get at like 5 years old and at 10 years old.
For sure.
Share your toys. Be nice to your brother. Like, you do these good things. You keep your chastity and your honor.
Right, Ren, really, you should steal all your toys from other kids and hit your brother whenever you... No, I'm sorry, not kidding.
If you feel like it, be yourself. You know, some days be nice to your brother. Some days fuck them up. But
that's what really happens anyway. So
yeah, you catch him playing with your toy, and you push his face into the fire.
Thank you.
There you go. So that's why it's hard to hate Alicent, because like I do know those girls that, you know, married the high school quarterback and who still goes to church, and they're all divorced. Yeah, they're all like, because that's what real life. There's nothing in life that says if you're a good person and you listen to your dad that you will get X, Y, and Z. There's nothing in life that says that. And I feel like those people that hold on to that like their armor, like I'm a good person, I volunteer, I didn't have sex,
I
didn't go to
followed the
college.
rules. This is all about rule following. That's why it was very
I'm
insightful.
entitled. Yeah.
Yeah, that Emily said Alicent is a rule follower, because people who follow the rules, they're operating under this idea that they are promised certain things if they do follow the rules. Rule followers also tend to resent people who don't follow the rules, and this is where the appearance of jealousy comes in. I think it's better termed as resentment of Rhaenyra for not following the rules. You could see jealousy in it, I suppose, but it's really more like, I followed the rules and you're not following the rules. You're going to get in trouble. Don't you know that? You know, that's the tone. And I think that's why it's easy to have a negative reaction to Alicent, because all of us are outgrown of our teenage years now. And we don't need anyone, we don't appreciate the finger wagging tone. It's like nobody really wants to hear that. But the thing we should appreciate about Alicent is that in the same episode that we see her under the rotting King Viserys, disassociating as he's, thrusting away, and we all feel so bad for her. We can see this awful situation that she's in, not only just sleeping with Viserys, but being summoned late at night like a booty call, very disrespectful way to treat the queen. But then in the same episode, she is extolling the virtues of being locked in a castle to Rhaenyra. Remember, they're sitting on the bench having that conversation. And so you can see that Alicent has internalized this whole thing. And so that awful scene that we saw with her and Viserys, to Alicent, she's just doing her duty. It sucks, but this is just part of it. This is what I have to do. And we see her later in the same episode being tender to Viserys and being kind. So she's not even acting like she was abused or raped necessarily. She's acting like, oh, well, that's just part of the thing, and my role is to put up with that and then just go back to being the mother or wife, tomorrow or whatever. So it's sad. We should feel sympathy for that, obviously. Anytime someone has internalized a sort of system of abuse like that. But that is where Alicent's judgment of Rhaenyra comes from. And the thing with Alicent judging Rhaenyra, some of it is emotional, some of it is practical. So we just tackled the emotional aspect of it. Alicent is a rule follower. She's mad and resentful at people who don't follow the rules. But of course, Rhaenyra's indiscretions or reckless decision-making does actually create consequences for the realm that the king has to deal with and that everyone's got to deal with. So it's well written because it is a mixed bag. You can pick up on the sort of selfish, emotional motivations, but also the fact that she kind of has a point. Similar with Otto. Otto sometimes has a point, even though we know he's very hypocritical and self-interested, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I feel like, just really quick, it's like those of us who went to college, especially those of us that are in debt, that went to college and studied and we did well, we graduated, and then you look to your right and then you see someone who didn't go to college, who's a millionaire, who started a bit like who has no debt and was able to invest in a bit. So it's like, that's how I see it with like Alicent and Rhaenyra. Like Alicent is the goody that went to, because it's like society tells you that when you, okay, just to get personal, I have a friend who like I'm healed, so I love her. But when we were friends, I like hated her because she had sex with the boys. She went to jail. She got kicked out of college and then went back later on and stuff. She made every single bad decision, but she has a better life than me. And it was hard for me. But she was also like my best friend. She's an attorney now, but she was also my best friend. But it's like, so it was hard for me in my brain to like put it together that like I made all the right decisions. You made all the bad decisions, but how come your life is better than mine? Like that was like the friendship that we have. And I feel like that's the point that Alicent has. Like you have to hold on to your honor because it's the promise of your second life after death, or even just while you're living, like for you to have a good life. So when Rhaenyra comes around throwing everything in Alicent's face, like, no, I don't have to be married to have sex. I can have sex for enjoyment. I can ride a dragon. I can wear pants. I can talk at council. Like Rhaenyra is throwing all of that in Alicent's face and basically saying that your sacrifice to be the goody goody, your sacrifice of laying under Viserys, taking those heaving puffs, are for nothing.
Mute.
Dave, you're muted.
Mute it. Classic Dave.
I was just assenting. I was saying yes. I totally agree. That is what's going on, Tim. So, how do you see that dynamic, or extra thoughts on that topic?
I feel like I said kind of everything I want to say about Alicent. It was going to be moving on to Otto. But, I mean, to go on Nettle's point, I understand that idea of same thing as someone who's burdened with the college debt and being spoon-fed that idea of like, you got to do this if you're going to be successful, you got to do this or you're going to be out picking garbage. Then you grow up and realize, hey, the garbage man makes $25 an hour and has a union and gets 10 paid holidays. What the hell? I should have been the garbage man. Right. It's like, yeah. It's
no
So the last thing I did want to put one more thought on Alicent, and then we should go to Otto. That makes sense. There's the reason why Ned Stark was killed in Game of Thrones is so that the other Starks could grow up. The reason why Rhaegar is dead is so that Dany has room to be Dany. It's the reason why Obi-Wan dies is because Luke has to become Luke. So this is a standard thing that you do with a teacher, with older generation person in a story to give way to the hero. So for Alicent, her father being sent away is that moment for her because she has been mostly under her father's thumb. We have seen her defy her father, like when her father sent her to talk to Viserys about the succession, and instead she counseled Viserys about stepstones. So she's not completely under his thumb, but certainly she's thinking of herself as a teenager. And, when dad's around, you listen to dad or you argue with dad. It's just the dad presence. So once he leaves, Alicent really looks in the mirror and truly realizes that she's on her own, but also that she has a lot of power if she wants to seize it because she is the queen. And so this episode, I really feel like we saw her become queen. Once Otto was gone and she had to step up, that was how she did it. She unfortunately internalized Otto's advice about seeing Rhaenyra as basically a threat and an enemy and a rival and not a friend. And so that is the decision that she has made when she comes out in the green dress, protesting the dismissal of Otto, announcing that she is secure in her Hightower identity. And yeah, that was a very intentionally scripted act to walk out in the middle of Viserys' speech like that. So she's definitely showing her power as queen. She's showing that she can interrupt the room, make everyone stop and pay attention to her. If she wears a green dress, everyone has to talk about it. She's done a lot of things to take power. And then, of course, she's collected Sir Criston Cole, the spoiled knight, to use as her pawn now. So she's definitely taking power. She's definitely seeing herself as a rival to Rhaenyra and setting herself up for that. So when we come back after this 9-year time jump, we should expect to see Rhaenyra and Alicent pretty much rivals, I would say, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like Alicent has like her first stone in her Infinity Gauntlet. It's like Criston Cole.
I mean, yeah, because it is what, like, when she shows up in the green dress, and the moment that she looks at Rhaenyra and calls her stepdaughter, like, it's no longer sister or anything like that. Like, it very much is the we aren't friends anymore moment. Like, you just saw a friendship end in that very moment.
Yeah. That green dress is something. I don't want to criticize the show or anything, but I do wish they would have shown more to show Alicent's lead up, like maybe some behind the scenes of her getting ready and like picking the dresses and like being like, no, just because Alicent is such a goody goody. What would it take? Like, as a woman, when you get married and you change your name, you're Targaryen now. Like, if I'm thinking in the head of Alicent, I'm married, I said the vows, I have the kids, you're Targaryen. Like, it's almost like she has no right to be wearing that green dress. But she does put it on. So it's like a calculated move to like, you know what I mean? So I'm still wrestling with that. I haven't like put myself in Alicent's headspace yet in the last episode. First episode, yeah, I got her. That's fine. But this new Alicent that we're seeing, it's almost like that green dress is like, there's no going back. Like, fuck Rhaenyra. I will never trust her word. I will never take her side because look what it got me. But it's like, how did she get to that though? I feel like there's more needed.
Yeah, like it very much is the moment of saying, okay, I'm choosing my family, not my stepdaughter, because she's not my daughter. And it reminds me of that moment in Game of Thrones, one of the times when Cersei's having real talks with Sansa. Like, look, hate your husband, but you will love your children. And we're seeing that with Alicent now of like, for better or for worse, her kids are going to be the one that she's putting her energy into. And we see like that's seeing that in the moment, like by choosing the Hightower side, but also then choosing her children. Like, and I think we get a mix of that. I don't want that's a spoiler to say. I don't think we saw it even in the preview. So I'll just drop it.
Well, I think the way to say this is that up until this moment, Alicent is maintaining the idea that Hightowers and Targaryens can be in the same family. And so she is a Hightower wearing a Targaryen dress, a Hightower having Targaryen Hightower children. This is all copacetic. Her dad says, no, it's not it. You either cling to Rhaenyra for her mercy or start thinking for yourself and prepare Aegon to rule. And so that is the whole point of the green dress, I think, is that she no longer sees Hightower and Targaryen as one in the same family. She's seeing them actually as split, and she's reminding everyone that she's a frickin' Hightower. So, yeah, that's not does not bode well for the future. But you can, in my opinion, I think we have enough to understand how Alicent has gotten there, especially because when you realize that, she stuck up for Rhaenyra several times. Rhaenyra wouldn't lie. Yeah. Rhaenyra wouldn't lie, and then she found out she did lie. Now, I do think that Otto is playing up the idea that Alicent sticking up for Rhaenyra is what led to Otto's dismissal. Otto was dismissed because he's been in Viserys' business for years, okay? Damon, Rhaenyra both told him. Other people have told him. That was building for a long time. But in Alicent's mind, she really feels like her trusting Rhaenyra ended up betraying her dad. And so
it's her dad. Come on. Yeah.
So that is what hardened the emotion, I think, against Rhaenyra. And also some of it is that judgment where Alicent's like, I followed the rules. I thought Rhaenyra was following the rules. And Rhaenyra's actually throwing her fingers up to the rules. So I can't trust her. I can't trust her not to kill my children. I can't trust her anything. And so, yeah, now there's the split.
But Alicent is right. See, this is time for you guys to clap.
Curveball.
Alicent does not have a dragon. Alicent does not have a dick. Alicent has none of the things that Rhaenyra has that could protect her. Rhaenyra could talk shit at a brothel, hop on her dragon, and fly away. You can't do shit to Rhaenyra. But if Alicent is sitting there at the brothel talking shit, you can follow her to her horse and stab her up. So, like, what I'm trying to explain is something, as always, that relates to real life. Like when I grew up around white people, the crazy blonde white cheerleader girls, that's who I hung around with. The way that they could talk is not the way that I could talk, type of thing.
Right.
And and that's more like, that's like a race issue, but what we're talking about is like class and agency between Alicent and Rhaenyra. But it's still to the fact that like I feel like Alicent is perfect. Alicent is acting perfect in what her range of motion is, if that makes sense to you.
Yeah, she's being who she is. She's staying true to her nature.
Yeah, she's staying true to her nature, but also in what capacity she can maneuver in these medieval times. So it's like, I would never expect Alicent to act like Rhaenyra. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, no, that's a great point.
She doesn't have a dragon.
She doesn't have a dragon. She's not wired that way, and she doesn't have and that's the thing is we're supposed to understand that the Targaryens bonding to dragons is part of the reason why they are that way. Like Damon and Rhaenyra are dragon riders. Viserys is not, and you can see the difference. So, yeah, good points. Let me grab these super chats here. A couple of good ones. So from Connor, big fan. I was at the Game of Thrones studio here in Northern Ireland, where I live, and was thinking of you three. The strength of this story and its characters, especially Alicent and Rhaenyra, makes it a stronger story than Game of Thrones in my glad we see it on screen. I kind of do agree that this show at least is coming across a lot better than Game of Thrones. I think it is a better show than Game of Thrones. I've had that feeling creeping up on me for a while, and I do want to see how they handle the time jump and then the transition into linear storytelling without the time jumps. But it is a more adult show than Game of Thrones. I think that is the best way to say it, and that's what I like about it. So yeah, don't have to agree, but I think bottom line is we're all very thrilled to have such a good show to chew on after the last couple seasons of Game of Thrones. So shared sentiment for sure. And then Constantine says, favorite scene so far in the show, each one of us. So, and whoever's got their first guess can go. I'm trying to think of mine. What would be my favorite scene? I can think of some great ones. I'm not sure.
Mean, there's a lot of good ones.
I know. Damon, Viserys and Damon in the throne room from, I think, the second episode was amazing. The entire Damon and Rhaenyra night excursion was probably the most hair-raising scene in the whole show. Like, that's the one that got me, my eyes bugging out the biggest, and got me the most immersed in the action. Like, what's going to happen next? Oh my God. So yeah, maybe that's my vote. But guys, what are the great scenes can you call to mind?
So your favorite scene is the brothel scene, Dave?
The whole thing, from the moment that she gets the map to the moment that she comes back. I think that was the most intense scene on the show. Yep.
For me, it's the next day, hungover Damon, wandering in, getting grabbed by the King's Guard, get your fucking hands off me. They throw him on the floor, and he's just like, ugh. And then Viserys kicking him. It's like, did you do it? And then Damon's just like, I need to know what you're accusing me of before I can say yes or no.
And in my opinion, that was the best episode. That fourth episode, that was the best one, in my opinion. Had both of those scenes, yeah.
I guess I'll go to war. I think Stepstones, only just because I'm not that action-y war type of person. So that Stepstones episode, just war with the dragons, seeing what that's like. Yeah, I'll say Damon's war with the Stepstones with the dragon fair, whatever scene.
Well, I think they did a really good job of telling the war scene in a way that was very personal for the characters.
Yeah.
And that's really what George aims to do with his battle scenes as well. So I thought it was very, very in keeping with how we see battle in A Song of Ice and Fire. We see it from a limited one person's point of view, like Tyrion at the Red Fork. It's chaotic. Then we're mostly tuned into the emotions of a couple of key people as opposed to just the movements of the troops and stuff. So.
Yeah. Yeah, that was a hard question, but a good one. Thank you for that super chat.
There's a lot of good scenes. Yeah. And yeah, Tim, the Damon being dragged into the Red Keep, thrown on the floor. It was a great scene for so many reasons. And Damon being on the floor but still working his angle was hilarious. It's like it shows you his weakness and his audacity all in one moment. Comparing himself to Aegon the Conqueror while he's just drunk and passed out on the floor. I mean, that is King Damon shit right there. That's it. That's what he's all about. You're the king. Your word is law. It's like, this is the attitude of a monstrous tyrant. Just throwing it out there. Good, amazing stuff. Because it's like, and my point is that we're seeing the philosophy engaged in this very visceral, personal, human moment. Damon's drunk. He's hubristic. Viserys is angry and disappointed. And yet we can also see a window into their different philosophies. It's right after Damon says, "You're the king and your word is law." Viserys says, "Your heart is even blacker than I thought." Because it's like Viserys has a very different outlook in ruling. He's thinking more about the consent of the governed, the responsibility of rule, the fact that you can't do what you want. He tells Rhaenyra, even I am bound by tradition. And Damon's like, fuck tradition and law, do what you want. And Viserys is like, that's not how it works. And Viserys is right.
No, Viserys doesn't have a dragon. They're both right. It's just Damon is thinking, and I have a dragon. Fuck the rules. What did he say this episode? Who the fuck cares what these High Lord thinks? I have a fucking dragon. It doesn't matter. I have a dragon. I can do it. I have a dragon.
So
versus Viserys, who's like, we got to play nice.
So you're right that they are both right and that they are both espousing a valid philosophy. Part of what Damon is saying is how the Targaryens became kings. At a certain point, Aegon did say, I have a dragon. I will burn you if you do not obey. I am the king. My word is law. You will obey. I have a dragon. So Damon has a point. However, Damon's philosophy carried to its full conclusion is Maegor the Cruel. And Maegor the Cruel undermined his own reign with his cruelty and his monstrosity. So I do feel like there's a little bit of what Damon is saying is like, yeah, that's true. That is one way to hold power or to gain power. But I think to hold power, you have to think like Jaehaerys did and like Viserys is trying to do. He's just not quite smart enough to pull it off. Tim, go ahead.
Yeah, like Damon is very much a living example of that idea of when you're a hammer, all your problems are nails. But a hammer can't be your only tool. It can't be the only thing in your toolbox. And that's where Viserys comes in. But Viserys wants to be like Jaehaerys, continue these things of peace and prosperity, but he's too much of a pushover. He doesn't have the drive in him that Jaehaerys did, which is when it comes time to play hardball, sometimes you do have to fall back on what Damon's saying. So it's like they're both like the opposite sides of this Jaehaerys coin. Daemon is only the hardliner, like use your dragons to solve your problems. Viserys is all about the soft power, but it's like, no, the reality is in order to succeed, you got to find that good working middle ground. You got to know when it's time to talk and when it's time to bring up the dragon ultimatum.
And Squisher Melissa Moore, once again, good point. Right after threatening the burning, Aegon lifted those up who bent the knee. And that is true. He did give everyone a chance. Aegon is very much like Genghis Khan as far as his, like, resist me and I'll destroy you. But if you don't, I'll be pretty nice. And that encourages people to surrender. And that's what happened. You see that by the time Aegon got to the north, Torrhen Stark had heard about both Harrenhal, but also that lords who knelt to Aegon were treated fairly. And so he made, maybe there was the prophecy involved too. But, and practically speaking, he was able to submit to Aegon because Aegon had shown mercy. If, Torrhen Stark would not have submitted to Maegor the Cruel, because that would be stupid.
Yeah.
That would be like the people in Lord of the Rings who went and surrendered to the orcs in the last episode. Like, what's that going to get you? Not very far. So, yes, good point. Aegon did ride that balance. Even he understood that it's not just about the king's word is law, because Aegon also did what? He preserved local traditions and customs and beliefs. He adopted the faith of the Seven. So he didn't just run roughshod over whatever the people thought and cared about.
Yeah, Tywin too. Like Tywin has a moment when he's trying to teach Joffrey. The man who made the reigns of Castamere tells him no, after they bend the knee, you have to let them get back up. That's the thing.
Yeah. They need to pay their taxes. Most important.
Yeah, he's like,
if you burn them, they cannot pay their taxes. We need
that's
money.
Another way. That's a good way to put it. Yeah. What is Aragorn's tax policy? So, what is Aegon's tax policy? We need taxpayers. We need some of them not burnt. That's it. So, getting back to our characters, let's go ahead and talk about Otto. We've already got into him a little bit. He starts off in King's Landing. He's the hand of the king. We know that he was the hand to Jaehaerys as well. So Otto seems to be some mix of personal ambition and also he's probably someone who thinks that he's the adult in the room. He probably sees Viserys as pretty incompetent and he thinks about himself as the one who's holding the realm together. I think that dynamic is definitely at play. So, like I said, there's a little bit of mix of he might think that he's working for the good of the realm, but he's obviously also very self-interested. Now, what we see is that Otto kind of overplays his hand. Like in that first episode, it was very uncomfortable how heavy-handed Otto was. Like he was almost bossing around Viserys and Rhaenyra. Yeah. And we, the viewer, are kind of like, whoa, dude. And so we see that eventually he pushes it too far and loses his place in court. But by then, he's already gotten his daughter married to the king, and she's already had a couple of sons. So, thoughts on Otto, where he's gone, where he is now, how he got there?
Well, Otto, we can blame Otto for a lot of things, but at the same time,
and we got to talk about Hobart too. Yes, thank you. Go ahead.
This is not me defending Otto, but at the very least, I can see where he's coming from in how I had said the one of the downsides of this firstborn takes all system. Otto is a second son. He stands to inherit nothing. The Hightower is his older brothers. The Hightower will go to his nieces or his nephew, really his nephews. I'm not actually sure. I don't think in the show if they named any of Hobart's children, but the point is like it's Hobart's kids that are going to inherit, not Otto. He stands to inherit nothing, just like Damon said, and his children stand to inherit nothing because of that. So everything he has to carve out himself. All he has is his role as Hand of the King. So I understand why he's doing the things he's doing, because he needs to hang on for dear life to this one thing that he has. The problem is that he's putting that, keeping his station above the realm. He's putting his own personal position before the good of everyone. It's all like, and even when he does try to do good, it always comes with that caveat of how does this benefit me more than how does this benefit the majority.
That's a really good point, Tim, about where Otto's sort of desperate energy comes from. He tries to hide it, but every once in a while it leaks out. You know, most of the time he plays it cool and he's just giving suggestions. But then if there's something that's going on that really he doesn't like, you'll see he jumps in a little more, he interrupts, and all of a sudden he looks a little like I said, a little desperate, a little tense. And I think that is where it comes from, Tim, is that he doesn't actually have anything other than this position. And that is the desperation that both Damon and Nanny Vagar observed in Otto when they said, Otto Hightower is a cunt. Second son who stands to inherit nothing he hadn't earned for himself. Or whatever it was.
Yeah, he has nothing to fall back on. That's like his thing. And it's a question of, after he is dismissed, where does he go? Does he go home? Because he doesn't really have anywhere else to go except back to Old Town and hope that his brother kind of takes him back in.
Cool. All right. So, and if you don't know what I'm talking about, I put out a video a week ago, interview with King Viserys. There's also an interview with Nanny Vagar on there. So if you haven't watched it, you've deprived yourself unnecessarily. And as King Viserys says, you should never deprive yourself. So check out that interview that I did with again, King Viserys and old Nanny Vagar. So working hard,
Nanny
guys.
Vagar's on the secret menu.
Yeah, that's right. I didn't want to, I just thought it would be better as a surprise, ramp it up. So I was trying to, I'm struggling with what Caraxes' voice would sound like. He has a deviated septum, so he should be like kind of whistly. But I'm not, he's kind of growly too, isn't he? So I don't know. I haven't come up with a Caraxes voice yet. Maybe Tim can find it. I don't know if you do voices, Tim.
Oh, I know exactly what.
How old is Caraxes?
I think Caraxes is like a young
he's like
man.
50 or something, 40, 50.
If anyone knows who Psychic Pebbles is,
old.
if anyone watches Smiling Friends, Caraxes would sound like Charlie.
Smiling Friends?
Smiling Friends. Psychic Pebbles is the creator of that. He has a deviated septum, but he also is a voice. He's both the voice actor and creator of the show, and the voice he uses for the character Charlie. I think that's what Caraxes would sound like. So people in the chat might know what I'm getting at.
I'll have to look that up. Yeah, I don't know it, but appreciate that.
For me, I feel like Otto is all of us in the middle class.
Thank you, Nettles, bringing it back on topic.
Well, no, I didn't get to say my spiel on Otto.
Okay, go ahead.
I know you guys want me to hate on him, but that's too easy and too obvious. Just read the text and you'll hate on him enough. But for me, I just feel like anybody who's born in the middle class, where you're not poor, but you're not rich, you're fucking Otto. Because your parents have driven into you that, hey, I'm still paying off this house. I don't even know if I could pass this house on to you. I don't have any generational wealth to give you. You have to go out in this life and create your own wealth, get your own fucking house, get your own fucking apartment, drive your own car. And if you fail, then sorry, you're just going to be homeless on the street. Like, those of us in the middle class, we know that our parents love us and our parents are nice and they've paid for this and this and that for us. But after a point, 100% of our success relies on us.
Yeah.
Sure, your mom can pay a phone bill or something if you fall behind, but not your whole entire life, because that's what it means to be middle class. Of course, upper middle class, we know that sure, your parents will be able to finance your whole fucking life. But I'm talking about middle class Americans that we're all Otto, where we know in the back of our minds from like when our subconscious is formed to when we graduate high school, that we are the vehicle for our own success. And although I hate Otto, if I had to be Otto, I would make the same exact decisions that he made.
Yeah, and
Like,
I've also
you're
pointed out that Otto has a certain amount of guts to like stick his nose in the dragon family and try to like mess with stuff. Like, he's literally making an enemy of Daemon Targaryen. He goes to Dragonstone and confronts Daemon face to face after Daemon stole the dragon's egg. Like, it's pretty wild audacity from Otto. And you could see also his commanding presence in that scene where he's like, sheathe the fucking steel. You know, it's like, this guy is here mixing it up. He's not just hiding in the council room like Beesbury or somebody just quivering his jowls. Like, he's out there mixing it up in the streets a little bit at least. So
I love Beesbury. Don't talk shit about Beesbury.
Hey, Beesbury's great. He's got his own Beesbury thing that he does. But I'm just saying, some of that that courage and that willingness to stick his nose in there that Otto has does come from that thing that we were talking about. The fact that he needs to prove himself, just like Damon, in fact. So,
yeah, second son. So it does take Otto from this place. In episode 1, Otto is in the same place that we are on our graduation day from high school, or when we get that job that we want, you know, where it's like, you've done the right things, you've fought hard, you've studied, you've made you've eaten the ramen noodles and made the sacrifices to save up for your dream car or whatever.
Well, I don't know if Otto's eating any ramen. I mean, you know, Hightower's are pretty wealthy, so.
What I'm trying to say is you make a sacrifice for the end goal. That's what I mean by eating the ramen. When you feel that sense of entitlement where it's like, I've earned this seat because of my own merit, and nobody could say that they gave me anything. That's what I mean.
Yeah, so it's almost like Otto is, well, just what he is. He's the second son of a rich family, but the thing is, instead of dad, it's his older brother is, I was going to say, it's kind of like when the dad is very stingy and he wants all of his sons to go out and do their own thing. You know, I'm not giving you, you know, shit. Or it could just be a respect thing where, like, you know, dad is very successful. So if you want him to give you the time of day, like, you better go out and conquer a small country or something. So, like, but in this case, it's Hobart. Hobart runs everything. He owns the house. He runs the Hightower. He runs the Citadel. And honestly, Otto, yeah, he's a Hightower too, but really he's pretty at the mercy of his brother. And you can see that's both practically and emotionally from the way that Hobart speaks to Otto. So, yeah, that was pretty interesting reveal that Otto wasn't just this manipulator, but like he's got somebody breathing down his neck, making him feel inferior. So, yeah.
That was cool.
Yeah. Layered. Yeah, see, people are now objecting to your analogy. Otto doesn't represent the middle class.
I'm not saying he represents the middle class.
Of course,
I'm not saying
weren't.
He's middle class.
Yeah.
I'm saying it's that drive of knowing that, like, me in my 20s, I knew that if I didn't pay my bills, I was going to be homeless. There was no second chance. There's no one going to come and save me. Everything is on me. And that's what being middle class is. It's like knowing that, like, your future depends on the decisions that you make.
Right, because you have to understand, it's not all about wealth. Most of this is honor and prestige. That's the currency of Westeros. So yes, Otto could go back to Old Town and live comfortably in the castle, and he's not going to be homeless or whatever, like Nettles in college. However, he doesn't have any respect. He's a nobody. Nobody's going to give a crap about him if he's disgraced and hasn't done anything, because the Hightowers have a very high bar for what, is prestigious. So, Tim?
Yeah.
Yeah, because it's like Lionel Strong, for example. Things don't work out as Hand of the King. He's still Lord of Harrenhal. He's got something to go back and go home to. But Otto doesn't have that. Second son, like no fallback. He definitely won't be homeless. I wouldn't see his brother putting him out, but right. I do see him going home and his brother lording it over him, all about like, well, you failed. Like, we're not going to get what we want. Like. Not Otto. Homer.
That's actually, honestly, Tim, that's probably it. Like, not only being disgraced, but like just getting shit from his brother for the rest of his life. Like, who wants that?
It's like to always be reminded of the one mistake you made and to never hear any praise for the good stuff you did. Like that's probably what's happening to Otto when he has to return home.
That's the guy in your hometown who almost went pro. Who almost got signed. It's like, oh,
you said that and I immediately knew someone in my life like that.
Because that's why George R. R. Martin is such a great writer. It's timeless. It's so relatable. And we are, like I said, we are the same people replicating our DNA. So the same people who were around in medieval times is the same people who are around in 2022.
I will just issue a real quick warning. No caps lock in the chat, please. Thank you.
I feel like I just wrote in caps. What do you mean?
The occasional comedic use, the sarcastic use of caps lock can be funny. But repeated caps lock comments, like, please don't.
Yeah.
Just asking nicely.
Your whole personality.
So, Tim, can you transition us to House Strong? We will come back to Rhaenyra, as well as there's maybe a couple other characters that are important. But I want to get to the Strongs. This is a really interesting topic. I do think it's a big question going forward. So start with Lionel, but feel free to encompass Harwin and Clubfoot, and I'll be back in 30 seconds to jump in on this.
Okay. The other triarchy, Lionel, Harwin, and
Larry and Harry. I got opinions on Larry and Harry. Okay, so Lionel Strong to me seems like the one who's been giving Viserys like the most actual good advice, but his problem is that in how Otto Hightower was too ambitious, Lionel Strong could actually stand to be more ambitious. Now, we go back to the scene when in the hunting episode, when Viserys is drunk, he's on the angry chair, and Lionel approaches him, and Viserys is like, let me guess, you're going to say that Rhaenyra should marry your son Harwin. And the thing is like, that actually would be a good choice. Rhaenyra even says the line herself, I feel like my father is just going to marry me off to the lord with the biggest castle. Well, Harrenhal, after the Red Keep, that's the biggest castle, and Harwin's heir to it. So it actually would have been a pretty good match. Harwin definitely seems to be into Rhaenyra. Rhaenyra, I think for her part, if she got to have a bit more one-on-one time with Harwin, and that's the thing too, like every time Harwin tries to get close to Rhaenyra, something like gets in his way. Like for last time, it was Damon when he interrupted right when Harwin is about to dance with her. But I think like it's a tragic story in that sense of like, it's a story of how things could have been if Rhaenyra and Harwin were able to have that one-on-one time, if they were actually able to meet early and I think.
Don't forget, Harwin was the one who found Rhaenyra out when she was in that brothel scene right before.
Yeah, but again, like she's not able. She has that second with him, but she doesn't have like time to like have a full-blown conversation.
Right, there's more important things going on.
It's two ships passing in the night that moment. So I think that's what I'm getting at. When Viserys gives her the green light before he infirms like, no, you're marrying Lord of Valyrian, when she has those few days where she's doing the tour and when she has the freedom to marry who she wants, I think Harwin Strong would have been a great candidate. I really do. I think that was I look at Rhaenyra and Harwin as a completely missed opportunity.
He is not nobly born enough for her. Stop it.
Yeah, he is.
Targaryen wed
he's-
Valerion for years.
He literally is
Well,
heir to the biggest castle.
Yeah, no, how
But
strong
what
is
Exactly
family-
what she said.
What about his family lineage, though?
how
It's about
strong is the
blood,
house
not
of
about
first men
castle.
descent? They're very
Yeah.
prestigious. Don't roll your eyes at how strong. Joe
I am
Magician's going to be
rolling
really
my-
upset somewhere.
No, because it's like, come on. There's a reason that Targaryens bred with Valerians when they literally have Aarons, they have everything in arm's reach, and they keep breeding with the Valerians because of the blood purity.
So
Strongs don't have none of that.
okay, so Aaron is the lord. They are the lords of the Vale. They are the lords
Right.
paramount of that region. Now, Damon married into Royce. Strong
Yes.
is at least as prestigious as Royce, if not more so. Harrenhal is a more prestigious castle and location.
I'm just saying, Royces, didn't they used to be kings? I don't think the Strongs were
Well,
ever kings.
technically, everyone was a king.
Yeah,
Like,
that
that's
doesn't-
the whole point of petty king. Anyone who had a plot of land said, "I'm the king of that."
But you guys know what I mean by nobly born. I feel like I said a Blackburn. What am I trying to say?
They date back to the Age of Heroes.
Blackwoods. The Strongs date back to the Age of Heroes?
Yeah, they're the same as the
Okay,
Blackwoods.
They're an old house.
Yeah.
Okay. We'll see.
Look, and what's actually more important is the current status of the house in the politics of that day. And we can see that the Strongs are powerful, not only because Lionel Strong is already on the small council and then is chosen for hand, but we can see at the wedding feast, the Strongs are right up there with the Hightowers, Valerians, and Lannisters at the front of the feast. So I think we are supposed to understand that they're one of the most powerful houses in the realm at that time. So
Definitely one of the oldest, because there's a thing with naming conventions in noble houses where you can sort of see where the first men start, and then it sort of starts to delineate when the Andals come in. We go from these very short, blunt names like Strong, Stark, and stuff, and then the Andals come in, and that's when you start getting these more flowy names like Lannister, you know, where you actually have to like pronounce the vowels and the consonants and all of that. Like it. So Strong is a very, very old house. It goes all the way back.
John Haymaker, I would love to see you do tapestries. Just let me know when and where. I'm always down to look at tapestries with fans of mythology. All the things we can point at. Anyways,
Cool.
thank you for the super sticker, My Heart Layla. How am I doing on the? Am I up to date on super chats? Looks like I am. Yes.
Yeah, I don't have much to say about Strongs because I don't have a lot of data.
Oh yeah.
I'm not going off of books, but I'm just happy to be here and happy to see them.
Well, let's work backwards here, because we didn't. The Strongs are a house that have snuck in. They weren't really having a strong presence at the beginning. They have crept in as a secondary line of characters. But by episode 5, Lionel's the hand of the king. Mm-hmm. Harwin is he captain of the Gold Cloaks, or is he just a Gold Cloak?
I think I'm not sure if he's captain. I mean, he's definitely the Gold Cloaks, but I think he might be captain. I think that's the other thing, is that Harwin sort of took Damon's job when Damon was off at the war. And that's where we see, like, with Mysaria, it's like no one was standing around waiting for Damon. Like, life moved on without him. And I think that's where Harwin is now, is that Harwin's raise in prominence was becoming captain of Gold Cloaks.
And that would make sense, because somebody who's the heir to a house could serve as in the City Watch. That's the kind of job you give an heir to sort of develop a reputation, cut your teeth, get some experience. But when that happens, they will be fast-tracked. So the idea would be that if Harwin is competent, he's going to end up at the top, if not leading the Gold Cloaks, at least for a time, and then he'll be pulled back to Harrenhal to be the heir, or to be Rhaenyra's personal protector, or whoever that goes. So that does make sense that he would be the head of the Gold Cloaks. And then Lionel, Clubfoot, he's kind of the most interesting. What is he about? He's obviously a rumor monger. He's a Littlefinger Varys character, more like Varys, because Littlefinger's an outsider. Varys is basically, he's doing the Varys routine, where Varys is a eunuch, and that's how he sells the idea that he's not threatening. Oh, he doesn't even have balls. He doesn't have land, doesn't have balls. He's very subservient,
Yeah.
And then obsequious, that's the word I was looking for. And then we've got Larry Strong using his I can't run with the boys. I'll just hang out with the girls because I can't play dodgeball, with my foot, So he's playing the same thing, but we see him make a political move in the scene with Alicent. He is essentially telling on Rhaenyra, is spilling the tea about the moon tea, and definitely trying to manipulate Alicent. He points out to Alicent that she doesn't have enough allies, and that is one of the things that makes her realize that I should claim Criston for my own instead of just turning him in or whatever. Like, that's like, oh, okay, I could use an ally. I can turn Criston into an ally. And then, of course, he's planting a doubt about Rhaenyra. And so, I'm so glad to know I was wrong. Huh. So glad I thought Rhaenyra had drinking the tea, but you're sure she didn't, so I must have been mistaken. So obviously he's manipulating Alicent. So what are the Strongs about? What team are they on? What's their agenda? I think that's the question that people are asking the most. Are they on Team Green or Team Black? Are they trying to serve the realm? Are they Team Strong? And in fact, in Fire and Blood, it's not a spoiler, but I will just tell you, one of the things at the end of the story, the Maesters who are just musing on the whole thing, they're like, people still trying to figure out what Clubfoot's agenda was. So even at the very end of this whole thing, in Fire and Blood, they're not sure what he was up to. Yeah. So he's a character that we should expect to be someone that we speculate on the whole time. But given what we've seen so far, and Tim, I'll start with you. What do you think the show is? And because remember, the show is potentially different than Fire and Blood. So just because the three of us know what happens in Fire and Blood doesn't necessarily mean we know what they're doing with the Strongs. In particular, because even Fire and Blood doesn't know what the Strongs were doing. So Tim, what do you think they're trying to show us with the Clubfoot being the son of the Hand, but also starting to play politics on his own? Should we think that he's acting in concert with Lionel? And that Harwin is also are they all three of them on the same page, or they have their own agendas? Maybe that's the question.
No, I don't think Larys is on the same page as the rest of his family at all. And I think that comes from his position as a second son, as someone who stands to inherit nothing. Okay. And it's unfortunate.
That's interesting. I don't know. I'm hoping you can give me a clue. I have no idea if they're on the same page or not. So you're saying no.
No, but I think it's rather unfortunate. I think Larys should have buddied up with Harwin and pushed for him to be, like how I said, how I think Harwin could have made a good match for Rhaenyra. Because if Harwin can get to that, and how Lionel really should have pushed for Rhaenyra marrying Harwin. Like, now, not in that moment when Viserys talks about it. Wait till the man sobers up, obviously. But it would have been a good proposal to make. Lord, the heir to the biggest castle, just as Rhaenyra said in her own words. But if Harwin could have gotten into that moment, if Rhaenyra marries Harwin and he becomes king consort, that opens up Harrenhal to then by default go to Larys. And I think Larys would have been much better off if he had actually pushed for that too, because that would have given him opportunity. But instead, I believe he's stuck in this mindset of, I'm a second son, I stand to inherit nothing. Harwin's not going to marry, Harwin's not on the path to marry Rhaenyra, so he's thinking in the moment of Harwin's going to be Lord of Harrenhal, I'm not going to get anything. So right now, he's working on his own agenda. He's just how Otto has is things he had to claim for himself. Larys is in the moment of trying to claim things for himself. At the moment, he has nothing to claim. So this is us seeing someone actually working towards that, trying to get something. And I think he's doing that by taking something out of Littlefinger's show book and doing the whole chaos is a ladder thing. Spread some rumors, spread some gossip, be a troll.
Okay.
Cause a little chaos, and then work within it and see where it can get you.
Yeah, I think that's right. And he might be looking at, who do I hitch my wagon to? Yeah. So if he can identify which player is stronger and help them gain an advantage, then that person may be beholden to them. And those are the kind of favors that they are looking for. So yeah, let me get a couple of good remarks here. Larys also has daughters, and they become Rhaenyra's handmaidens, or at least one of them does. I have a feeling we might get that after the time jump, because we haven't seen much Harwin either. So when we come back, Harwin should be around Rhaenyra, so it makes sense to be like, oh, one of Rhaenyra's handmaids is Harwin's sister. So they might still do that. I could see why they didn't introduce them yet, but we don't know. So we'll see. And then how does Larys know about the tea? Well, they have shown us a lot of times about
secret passages.
Yes, they have shown us camera angles that looks like somebody is spying on the events in a room. And other times they have used the camera angle to show us people's perspectives. Like in the wedding in particular, they showed us somebody giving a hard glance, and then the camera pivots to the thing they're looking at. And the shot is like through the crowd, almost as if that person was holding the camera. So they're using perspective to show us what people are seeing, which means that those scenes that look like someone is spying on Criston and Rhaenyra, for example, or whatever, those are probably Larys watching, or other rumor mongers and little birds that report to people like Larys and Otto and Mysaria. So it could have been some little kid, some handmaiden, Mushroom, who seems to be a musician, as we pointed out. He seems to be the hand drummer in the band there. So all those little birds and spies and things, those are the perspectives that are watching. So how does Larys know about the tea? Well, he either observed some part of its transit, or somebody else did that told him about it. That's what we're supposed to assume.
Yeah.
And there's a super chat that I want to go back for as well, from Dimitrescu. I'm sorry, I did my best. I am part of the writing group at Beastly Books in Santa Fe. My instructor knows George, and I've met him once. The next time I see him, I will be showing your channel to him. Sweet.
Nice.
It's this is, people ask me sometimes. What's that? Show him ice spiders, Minty is saying.
Ice spiders.
People ask me sometimes, what is that you're holding? Nettles.
Who, me?
Yeah.
Oh, a pen.
Okay.
I'm writing notes, so I don't forget what I'm going to say.
Okay,
Sorry,
yeah,
I'm just intrigued. No, ice spiders and fucking Beastly Books. I'm fucking into this. What are you talking about? Talk.
Well, I mean, people have asked me about me getting contact with George. Do you think George knows about your stuff? Like, I have no idea.
Yeah.
I almost like choose not to think about that, because it's too torturous of a possibility. Know, right? Like if if George drops my name one day, that would be too crazy to comprehend even. So I'm just sort of doing my thing and hoping we'll see moon meteors in Winds of Winter. But yeah, by all means, if anybody knows George and they want to tell him about my channel, that'd be awesome. Thank you. I don't know what to say. I'd appreciate that. I mean, I would love to know if George thinks I'm a crazy person, or if it's like, oh, he's the chosen one. He's figured out all my ideas. I have no idea which it is.
Well, no, there is a quote that George said on some interview where he said that one of us, someone in the fandom, wrote his ending down. He read it. He was like, imagine my surprise on the internet, and I read my own ending.
Oh, I hadn't heard. I heard him say stuff like that.
Yeah,
but
something like that, where someone has basically one of us has figured out the ending.
I just want to get the moon meteors right. That's all I care about. Did I figure out the cause of the long night? I'd be happy with any of that. So
when we get TWOW, if a meteor hits the wall, I'm gonna have to lock myself in my room, because I'll be cackling like a madman for days.
I don't even know what.
My headcanon is George is in the comments.
I will probably
George is in the fucking comments. Come on.
If that happens, Tim, I'm just gonna go live and start cackling. I'm just gonna sit here and smoke the bong and cackle and be like,
I'm just saying, if you were George, would you not be in the comment section of these?
So he used to do that more, and said that he had to stop doing it because it was starting to affect him. Well, like a long time ago, like many years ago, he used to read fan theories and stuff, but he said he had to stop because it was people were guessing stuff, and it's too much of a temptation to change things because people guess, and he wants to stick with the things he's foreshadowed so that the story makes sense. So I don't think he's out there reading fan theories. I do know that he has minions around him who probably do read fan theories. So I have to think every once in a while somebody might mention to him, "Hey, George, I read this crazy theory. Are there really green men that have antlers on their head? Is that a thing?" You know? Sorry, I went a little Nanny Vagar register there all of a sudden.
You were warged by Nanny Vagar.
So look, if Dimitri, if you come back and let us know how that goes. That's all I could say. If you happen to,
Dimitri.
I'd be dying to know if he knows who I am. That would be awesome to know. I don't flatter myself by thinking about that too much, but obviously anybody who makes theories and has a YouTube channel probably thinks about it sometimes. So, yeah. Thank you. What were we talking about? The Strongs. I think we pretty much got the Strongs. Mostly keep an eye on them. You know, Lionel's advice is so good, so consistently, that I had started to suspect that maybe, you know, he's up to no good, just like Otto. He's just a better card player. But the thing is, I think what they were mostly doing is trying to set up Lionel as the obvious choice for hand after Otto was dismissed. That's why his early scenes were always him giving good advice. So I don't really know what he's up to. He's probably a good of the realm guy, I tend to think. But it's just interesting that Harwin and you know, Harwin ends up with Rhaenyra, and Lionel seems to be potentially pro Alicent. So that's kind of the thing I'm wondering about is like, is the whole family working together, or are they really have totally different agendas maybe? I
didn't get to give my spill on the Strongs.
Oh, go ahead.
I don't think that they're working together, just because I feel like if they were working together, they would have taken over the world. Because you've got brains, you've got beauty, and then you've got money behind it. Those are the three pillars of them. So you have
and brawn. Lionel, don't forget the brawn of Harwin.
The brawn of Breakbones.
Beastbone.
So it's like, if they were working together, I feel like they could have made like a master plan, something kind of to what we've seen with Tywin. But they're not working together, and that's why it's chaos, and that's why it's not a cohesive plan. It's like Lionel is just trying to be good at his job. He wants to be known as a good council member, so he's just giving good advice just on his own. And then you have Harwin, who's just like, hey, I like to hit things, so I'm a good, you know, commander of the city watch, so I'm just gonna do my thing. And there's Rhaenyra there, maybe whatever, right? And then you have Larys, who's the Whisperer. So you have the Whisperer, the person that's telling you everything going on. You have the beauty and the brawn, which would be Harwin. And then you have Lionel, which is the patriarchy, the father figure that has the money and the castle to finance all these endeavors. But they're separate, which almost makes them obsolete.
And just to add to your point, some of you they haven't really mentioned it in the show, but Lionel forged 6 chains of a Maester's chain in Old Town and then left. Yes. So not only is he very smart and has random knowledge that you might not expect somebody to have, he potentially has a connection to the Maesters and the Old Town faction, whether that's a direct conspiratorial connection or just the idea that Lionel might be sympathetic to the interests and the thinking of Old Town because he's been there and absorbed some of their ideas or whatever. So keep an eye on that.
Knowledge.
But what's that?
It's just knowledge. I'm just saying, like, with Lionel, it's just knowledge. Like, we all know knowledge is a benefit always. Like, some of us might say it wasn't important to go to college, but it's a benefit that I have this.
I think that's probably true. But again, when I was looking at the Maester conspiracy thing, you do have to at some point try to figure out what the strong agenda is, and that the idea that he trained as a Maester for a while opens up the idea that he could be plugged into the Old Town side of the conspiracy. And I did notice it was interesting at the wedding when Alicent went over to the Hightower table. Hobart said, he didn't say House Hightower stands with you. He said Old Town stands with you. Could be just a manner of speech, but it could be more like all of Old Town, Citadel, the Maesters, like, we're all on the same page and we support you. So what did you think of that, Tim?
I think in the preview for the next episode, there's the line about a father compromised by the actions of a son. Now, for my part, in the strong thing, I have an idea, but to say it is too spoilery. But I think the strong power play is going to happen soon, probably, and that we're going to start seeing it in episode 6. So it's a thought I have that I want to kind of keep to myself, at least until after tomorrow. And then if we do this, like the next time we get together again, I can bring it up.
But you're putting a marker down on it.
I'm putting a pin in it. It's a save it for later deal.
I'm writing it down too. Strong power play.
The strong power play, I think, it has yet to happen.
Yeah, because Lionel's been very just, I'm the advisor, I give good advice, and here's a handkerchief, Your Majesty. So that's pretty much been what he's done. You know, handkerchief or a bucket. Melina says, unless the family agenda is to cause the civil war. Well, that's the thing, is there's so much chaos that leads up to the war. Everybody does a little bit, but the question, like I said, the interesting question is each member of House Strong, are they, like I said, are they acting in concert? Are they rowing in different directions? We're going to have to just keep an eye on all of them and see how it goes. So,
so we did Viserys, Damon, Alicent, Strongs.
We did Otto. So let's talk about Rhaenyra. She's pretty important.
Ray.
Some would say the most important.
Ray.
From Connor. 1 second. I really enjoyed the impending doom of the banquet scene and how each character's natures were on display and how those natures played into the tension of the scene until it explodes. Absolutely. Everybody brought baggage to that wedding, is the way that I said it. Everybody had their emotional baggage, and it all exploded. And I do think it was a microcosm for the war itself. In the end of the stream I did 2 days ago, I did a spoiler warning, and then I talked about how all the movements of the dance seem to foreshadow some of the major beats of the war. So it's a lot of omens of war in that episode. And yes, the impending doom, that was the vibe. And of course, the Dance of the Dragons, the Dance of the Dragons, that's the name of the Targaryen Civil War, but originally it was the name of a ballad that was about two lovers in Valyria watching the doom unfold. So the whole thing about the Dance of the Dragons is connected directly back to the doom. And the reason why they applied that name to the war is because the doom of Valyria was the destruction of the Valyrian dragons. And the Dance of the Dragons War is essentially the beginning of the end of House Targaryen. So the impending doom is very intentional there, and I thought they nailed it. It felt great.
Wow.
Oh, did you just learn something?
I'm always learning. If I'm on LML's channel, I've learned one thing. It is known.
I don't think. And I feel the same with Tim. You know, it's one of the reasons why we keep him around. I learned every time Tim talks, it's either I didn't know that, or it's like, oh yeah, I read that one time and forgot it, and Tim knows it exactly. So
yeah, no,
and then there's the chat. One of the reasons why I like going live right after the episode is because the chat points out 5 things that I missed, and by the time I do an episode review, there's always several observations that came from the myth heads. So it's teamwork. Teamwork.
No, I'm definitely doing some research on the Dance of the Dragons and that ballad that you're talking about, because that was mind-blowing. All jokes aside, that's crazy. Because I'm always trying to figure out what Dance of the Dragons means. Because it echoes throughout history, like just the word dance and what it means. Like, come, dance with me then. To me, it means, in my head canon, it means death or a fight to the death. Like, Dance of the Dragons is also dying of the dragons, like we know, and like, Raymore Royce, come dance with me then. It's a fight. It's a death.
So the idea is that war is a deadly dance.
Deadly dance, yes.
That's the idea. So yeah, it's a multifunctional name, and it also riffs on the title, A Song of Ice and Fire, which is both talking about the war between ice and fire, but also a kind of reintegration and a harmonization of ice and fire, just as a song is also a harmony, a harmonization of...
What do you do when you listen to a song? You fucking dance. There's different dances. You could do a slow ballet. You could do a cha-cha, or you could fucking dance to the death.
So we got a very generous super chat from A Little Rain, who wants to know what we are calling the wedding. The three, and I think all the names are good. I've swung around a couple times. Green wedding, because Alicent wore the green dress, and because so many people were green with envy in that wedding. The white wedding, because the soiling of Criston's white cloak and the idea that Rhaenyra has this scandal of sleeping with Criston. She's wearing the white dress. Both of them are sullied in ways. Okay, so that makes sense. And then the rat wedding for the rat. What do you guys think?
Rat wedding.
Minty is happy. Tim?
I go with white wedding, and look up the lyrics to Billy Idol's White Wedding and tell me that it doesn't fit well with the scene that what happened. I think White Wedding's a great one.
Yeah, I think I was leaning White Wedding, and the Billy Idol thing put it over the line for me. So, and also Gray Area called it the white wedding in her video. So I gotta go with that.
Okay. I need to listen. I need to find that Billy Idol song because I'm lame. But
it's a good
I
song.
I go with rat wedding because the rat symbolism for the past 2 episodes has been too strong for me to ignore.
It has. It's been off the hook for sure.
Thank you, A Little Rain. That was a good question. Green wedding, white wedding, rat wedding.
And I would have used the picture of the rat drinking the blood on one of these screen caps, but it's just too dark. It didn't really work.
Already.
Yeah.
It's too much. There's so much foreshadowing in that. Those who know.
Yeah. So Dimitri, that would be I do think I could do a really good interview with George if you could set that up. History of Westeros, I will tip the hat to them. They did a really good interview of George, and he's hard to pin down. If you watch that interview, he is a squirrely dude. Like, they have to ask him the question 4 times to get an answer, but they did get some good answers out of him. So definitely props to them on that. Yeah, I'd love to talk to him because I think I would have different questions than most people do for George. So
Moon meteor questions, yeah.
I'd also
Things
love
that
to
haven't been
interview.
asked 1,000 times.
There's a whole art to it. You can't just ask him about theories because he'll be like, "Oh, that's what sounds like a good thing to talk about on the forums, young man." He won't give away his secrets, so you gotta draw him out.
And George got an attitude on him. George will fucking cuss you out in his George way. That's what I've noticed. I'm like, he's kind of mean. There was one interview where he was like laughing at a guy because the guy asked about Team Black or Team Green, something like that, and he was just like, "If you need me to explain which team, then you haven't read the story." Like
it's kind of like my pop. I'm always a little bit afraid of my pop. I love him, but he was in the Navy and he'll chew you out. He'll call you out. Tim,
Make
sorry,
you
go
feel
ahead.
shit, yeah.
It's like, when it comes to Team Black and Team Green, it's like, okay, let's make our memes, make our jokes, but at the end of the day, if you really are latched onto either Team Black or Team Green, and you aren't Team Smallfolk, and you can't see that it is Team Smallfolk, I'm sorry, but you missed the entire point of the story.
Well, Tim, that's why I made that video. I still get people occasionally complaining that I titled it Team Black or Team Green with a question mark, and then was like, Team Smallfolk, bitch.
But there are people
that's
who
the point,
take it
though.
Seriously. The shipping wars are real.
It's absolutely the thing. I mean, I think it's also fair to say that you can shift gears. Like, if part of you knows that ultimately Team Smallfolk is the point, High Lords playing the Game of Thrones, the cause of people to suffer, are in the wrong, and you can still shift gears to say, yeah, but I'm kind of Team Green or Team Black because I just like these characters better. As long as you hold both things in mind and don't devolve into open just standing the characters. Because what's weird is when people stan a character, then they're engaged in basically just excusing all of their actions and only seeing the other characters as antagonists. And that's not really... That's definitely missing a lot of the story. Sorry, Nettles, what?
I'm agreeing with you in saying, yes, that's what happened with Game of Thrones, the TV series, Arya or Sansa or Robb or Jon. Like, people just saw these characters as, like, can never do anything wrong, can never have any criticism, and it's like, come on.
Right.
Even George criticizes them.
And as long as we keep the one perspective in mind, then it's fine to have fun and talk shit and all that. That's obviously part of it too. So it's not like we're the fun police over here. But if you're missing the Team Small Folk angle, that really is the ultimate moral point of the story of all of this warfare. Like George's critique on war and medieval society, it boils down to that sentence about playing the Game of Thrones and the High Lords, the people suffering. So
yeah. And it doesn't matter whether you're in medieval times or 2022. Small folk are always majority rules. They're the most important because they're the biggest population of the type of people that you're dealing with. So it's
right,
like,
because the whole idea of a monarchy, and Tim, I'd like to hear your thoughts about this, is just that like people tend to need some sort of system to hold
Yes.
society together, especially when it gets bigger. People do tend to like leadership. It works to have a few people in charge making executive decisions and keeping that executive broad level perspective while everyone else does the granular day-to-day stuff. So you get some sort of system like this because people like it. They create them inevitably over and over and over. So the point is that the leaders in power are not supposed to exploit the rest of the people with that power. They're supposed to use that power to try to generally improve society. That's the point of any government. So I feel like even though this is a barbarian monarchy, it's dragon lords maintaining power by means of force. It always comes back to that feudal contract, the consent of the governed. I mean, if you just look at Roose Bolton's very amoral, a quiet land, a quiet people, it's still the same principle. If you do Ramsay stuff, you're going to have rebellions coming to your doorstep, and who wants that? So quiet land, quiet rule, keep things chill. That's better for everyone. Even Roose gets it. Tim, your thoughts?
Yeah, like, we always gonna need somebody in a leadership role. Like, I listen to a lot of punk music, but I know that you can't have anarchy. Like, it just doesn't work. People need delegation. And there's always going to be people that are going to be the leaders and people that are going to be more of a follower role. It's knowing when to be a leader and actually leading, and not just placing the burden on other people and expecting them to do it. And because that's what's going to lead to exploitation of the small folk, and that's what we see here. We have some lords who are very benevolent, and we have some lords that abuse their positions. Like you said, like with Ramsay's one who's going to abuse his position. He's going to break the feudal contract and do whatever he wants, and he's going to show all the things that's wrong with Damon's argument about using dragons, and who cares what these high lords think. Like, no, you need to care what they think, but you definitely also need to care what the small folk think, because we've had that discussion of numbers. Like, enough rats will bring down a bear. Enough rats can bring down a dragon. It's that mindset. Like, you need to recognize what's the common good and where the leadership lays in that.
So this is actually, we started talking about Rhaenyra and drifted away, but now we really are talking about Rhaenyra's primary conflict. So we see, like, at the beginning, her conflict is that she's set aside by her dad. Her dad doesn't look at her as the heir. And that's led to this very diffident attitude of just like, I just want to eat cake and fly my dragon. I don't really care. I hope my dad has a son. I said it when we watched that first episode that really Rhaenyra was hurt by being overlooked. And her defense mechanism to that was to act like she didn't care. I just want to go do my own thing. But as soon as Viserys gave her the responsibility, we saw how much it meant to her. And we've seen her at times take it very seriously. Like when she rejected Criston Cole and said, no, I'm going to be the realm. This is my job. I obviously respected Rhaenyra a lot in that moment. The thing is that Rhaenyra, as we said with the Alicent discussion, she is a character who is potentially oppressed by this patriarchal system, but has a dragon. So she has the opportunity to defy it. And she's been made the heir, which gives her a very unique status, different from any other highborn woman, princess. Even Alicent is a queen. She gets her power from Viserys. Rhaenyra, once she sits on the throne, her power comes from her. Okay, and she has the dragon. So a very different character than Alicent or any other female. So then we have Damon pouring philosophy into her ear, and it's the big dragon energy philosophy. We do what we want. We are above common men, both because we're royalty and because we're Targaryens. We take what we want, and we saw episode 4 put a spotlight on that. Damon shows her how that works with the brothel thing and on their whole excursion. Then she goes and puts that element into play when she sleeps with Criston. She takes what she wants, doesn't care about the consequences. So I feel like Rhaenyra's primary conflict at this point is how she's going to reconcile the dragon energy, which is kind of her lifeline. It's her way of escaping her confines and the manipulators and the patriarchy, but also understanding her responsibility, the feudal contract, the fact that she needs consent of the governed. It isn't just, I'm the king and they don't get a choice. That isn't the end of the story, particularly because she's trying to be the first queen. It's a revolutionary act. So we have to talk about Rhaenyra, like how is she setting herself up to do that, right? Go ahead, guys. And then I will get these super chats that are lingering. I got those, don't worry.
Yeah.
We'll see.
Go
ahead, Tim.
I was gonna say, like, going back to the Hunt episode, when Rhaenyra has that moment with the old ladies Lannister and Redwine, and she drops that line of oh, what are you doing to help the realm eating cake? And it's a great moment. It's like, yeah, okay, we can laugh at it, we can get our Yas Queen slay moment, but at the same time, it is recognizing of like, yo, you're burning bridges you haven't even built yet. Like, these people are important. You might not think of them as important, but they're going to be important. And what's stuck out to me from that is those two houses, Lannister and Redwine, they're going to end up, when we get to our current story in the main books, they're actually the houses that sort of take the place of House Valyrian. Because where we are, House Valyrian is the richest house and basically in control of the Navy. Now, it's not a spoiler to say, but just more context clues. But when we get to the main books, House Valyrian's like second-tier Stannis supporters. The richest house is Lannister. The fleet is the Redwine fleet. So it's like, when we get to what's going to happen, like we're going to see like the making and breaking of houses. And I think it just stuck out to me that it was those two in particular that she insulted, Lannister and Redwine, because of how important they're going to become in the future.
That's a good catch, Tim. You're totally right. The Redwine they are the naval power of the realm. And the Lannisters, of course, they were the richest before and after the Valerians. But yes, functionally, they do take that place. And we see the Valerians buddying up to the Targaryens. The Lannisters end up buddying up to the Baratheons in the same way. They're the second most powerful. They get one of theirs married to the royal family, and so on. So yeah, that's a good point. So we've judged Rhaenyra, harshly. We've talked about it for, not taking advantage of that courtship tour, to build alliances. But I also think it's realistic that she wouldn't be good at that right away. And I think we're supposed to understand that Viserys isn't necessarily preparing her ideally to do what she's doing. However, what's interesting is that we're going to come back after this 9-year gap, as we've talked about. Mm-hmm. Everyone's going to have grown up a lot and learned a lot. So we should see a Rhaenyra that is a much better player. And we should see she's got some more allies as well. She's not sort of just drifting around trying to find her way. She has a husband. She has a boyfriend. She has kids. She has, she's got a setup around her now. So we'll have to see what that's about and how she's learned politically. But when we come back, we're still not ready for the war. There's still several years to go before any succession crisis breaks out. So there's still time for Rhaenyra to improve on.
Rhaenyra has no children at this point, so we're not ready for a war.
Right.
She has no children.
Right. Well, yes, correct.
But one thing I want to say, like with House Valyrian again, is we do see like something's gonna happen. We don't know what, but obviously something happens that sort of knocks them out of that top tier role and leaves them to where they are in the current story. And we've seen Corlys's The War in the Stepstones. That was financed primarily by Corlys. And I do think I think the context is that it's going to be House Valerian's support of Rhaenyra and House Targaryen and the use of their own money and resources. I think that's going to be a big contributing factor as to why they're not prominent anymore. Like they're not like they don't even appear in the Game of Thrones show.
Yeah, I think you're right about that.
Yeah. I think it's also just good to keep in mind for medieval times, because I get this question or line of questioning a lot. It's like in this series, you know, Otto, like when you lose your job in medieval times, you're done. You might as well commit suicide.
Are we talking about medieval times, the restaurant? Did you used to work as a waitress there? I feel like this is more about your personal life now.
Times,
oh,
how wealth is dispersed.
Oh,
I'm just saying back then.
Sorry.
Like if you lose your job, that's it. There's no LinkedIn. There's no Craigslist. There's no Monster. There's nothing for you. Because back in these times, your job was what your dad did. If your dad was a carpenter, you were a carpenter. If your dad was king, you were king. So in these times, when we're talking about people like Otto and anyone else, Gendry or anyone, it's like we have to take off our 2022 lens, because our 22 lens tells us that, like, fuck this job. You know, if they're not giving me paternal leave as well as maternity leave, you know, if they're not doing this, fuck it, there's another one for me.
We have a lot more individual liberty. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Right. But in this time, there's no job for anyone at all, ever. You're literally always at the mercy of what the fuck your dad did. If your dad was a butcher, you're a fucking butcher. If your dad was like, that's what I'm saying. So it's like,
yeah,
we already make this shit life or death, and we put these big grand, you know, things on it. But I just want everyone to understand that it's not like 2022 where it's like, oh, I was sent home to the Hightower. Oh well, I'll just go live in my castle. It's like, no, bitch. There's literally no other job that you're qualified for. So when you fail, it's not like us failing. This is big nuclear fissure, like you said. Failing. Like this is a big deal. This is make or break your dynasty type decisions. Not make or break your year. Oh, 2022 is bad for me because I lost my job. No, we're talking about the rest of your life.
So related observation is the way that people deal with the injustice of the system. George is showing us an unjust system, and so when people chafe against that, we naturally want to root for them because we're a lot of individual liberty. We're very empowered. We're very hip to the idea that you shouldn't tolerate any sort of abuse or injustice. You know, you stand up to it and all that. So what George is doing with his characters, especially Rhaenyra, is showing us that they're stuck in an unfair situation. But just because you rebel against something that's unfair doesn't mean shit. It doesn't mean that anything's going to go well for you at all. And we can see that with Dany, obviously fighting against all kinds of injustice in Slaver's Bay. But just because you burned all the slave masters doesn't mean everybody sings Kumbaya and you know, adopts a new way of life. So this is the realism of it. It's like we should applaud Rhaenyra for not putting up with what Alicent is just internalizing and being like, yeah, it's just how it is. Like, we can definitely cheer for Rhaenyra not accepting that. But then we have to go a step further and say, well, how is she handling that? How is she dealing with it? Is she acting in a moral way, in a selfish way, in a wise way, or an unwise way, taking on that challenge? And I think it is sort of like, it feels unfair because we're almost, it's like we're adopting the perspective of that times that puts Rhaenyra on an uphill slope. She is facing more obstacles than a prince would to be the queen. There's no doubt about that. But
Yes.
that is the circumstance she's in. So we still have to judge her on like how she's handling that challenge, given that it's a big challenge. And that's a fun tightrope to walk. But that's why I like the character, even though I'm pretty tough in my judgment of Rhaenyra. I don't hate Rhaenyra. I empathize with them a lot and relate to the character a lot. So that's what makes a good character. It makes you feel, makes it compelling. Yeah, somebody else talk. I've been talking.
We like when you talk.
Well, hopefully, I mean, that's what we're doing here. That's the premise of the channel. So, Super Chat has been sitting here for a second. Do you think the Maesters are making the king sick? Or are they not treating him to the best of their abilities on purpose? I think it's no question that they're not treating him. Now, he has leprosy. That's real. Maybe they could have given him leprosy. I don't think that's impossible because the Maesters study diseases, so they can take tissue cultures and put him in vials and things like that. But it's most likely, or it's very likely that at the very least, Melos is not treating him the best he can, because we've seen twice now the other Maesters say, oh, but a poultice, what about this? Like, nope, leeching.
Yeah.
Leeching. It's working well, clearly, you know.
Yeah, I think the acolytes are trying. I think they're trying, but it's like, it's almost like when a nurse like disagrees with a doctor, but then the doctor lays firm. Like that's what's happening. They're I think the acolytes are doing their best and actually trying to do things that that may work. Maybe they won't work, but they're at least trying. But Melos is the one cutting them down, saying no, like leeches, maggots. Like this is what works. Trust me.
So yeah, there's we've all got our eyes on it. The Maester conspiracy. It's only a matter of like how big it is. Is it Melos in the pocket of Otto and Hobart? It could just be a conspiracy of those three people, or it could be something much broader ranging. So there's definitely some funky business going on, but we'll have to keep our eyes on it to see how far it goes. So other thoughts on Rhaenyra and where she's come to. What about the falling out of the relationship with Alicent?
Well, that depends on if they're gay or not.
I don't think it really does. I mean,
I wish the show would have given that to me, because if they're gay, it tells one story. If they're hetero for each other, it tells another story. That's just what I mean. It doesn't matter, but it it's just different nuances.
Well, look, it's not canon. It's mostly it seems to be something that the actors used to inform their performances. That's how they talk about it. It's not something where Ryan Condal explains after the episode, well, actually, they've experimented and their girlfriend, you know. It's more like the actors are using that energy to help portray it as a close relationship. So I don't think it's something that we have to consider as this big either or that affects the plot. We're just supposed to understand they're very close. They fell out. Like I said, the system is pulling them apart. And also they're very different people. So they're responding to this oppressive system in pretty much opposite ways. We've mentioned that Rhaenyra has the dragon. But what I'm talking about is like we discussed how Alicent feels betrayed because she stuck up for Rhaenyra, said, oh no, she wouldn't lie. Turned out she was covering up a series of controversies or whatever. What about Rhaenyra? Rhaenyra, she originally felt somewhat betrayed by the fact that Alicent became close to her father and never told her. Now, we know that the king told her not to say anything, so we understand that, but at the same time, Rhaenyra was very hurt in that scene. She was looking at Alicent when Viserys is like, and I will marry Alicent Hightower. Rhaenyra doesn't look at her dad. She looks at Alicent, and she's hurt. So this was one of the beginnings of the falling apart of their relationship. That's what I want to try to pick up on.
I don't know. I kind of see the Rhaenyra situation kind of close to like a conservative Christian type of upbringing and exploration type of situation where you feel like, okay, so I'm having sex and I didn't die. I didn't burn up and go to hell. So that must mean that every adult that's told me that having sex was wrong is wrong, right? Some of us come to that conclusion where we're like, I've been told this thing my entire life. I go against it. and oh my God, I didn't burn. A stream of fucking lightning didn't come out from the sky and burn me to death. So I feel like that's where Rhaenyra's at, where she's like with Alicent in that situation where Rhaenyra has done everything. She's had sex, she's flirted, she's used her body for her own gain. She's seen other people do that. She's been in, it's one thing to do stuff yourself, it's another thing to be out in a brothel seeing other people do the things that you thought about but were so embarrassed to even think about.
So I'm glad you bring up that whole parallel. Tim, did you grow up like raised religious in any sense, or how did you grow up?
Okay, so I was raised.
Brief answer.
I was raised
good or bad.
It was a bad experience. Okay, so like I'm Lutheran. I was baptized Lutheran but my family's mostly Catholic. Like I actually have a cousin who's a Catholic priest.
Okay.
The small Catholic church in the town where I was born in refused to baptize me because I was born out of wedlock. But my grandma demanded that I have some kind of religious upbringing. So I was baptized Lutheran, and I went to a multi-denominational Christian Sunday school. And I can actually remember, can pinpoint the moment I lost the faith, because I was going to this Sunday school, but I was also going to public school. And we had an archaeologist come in, and he brought dinosaur bones in. And I could I could see the bones. I could feel, he let us touch the bones. I could feel them. I could see that these were real. Then I went to Sunday school, and they tried to do the creation myth. And I raised my hand, and I said, "What about the dinosaurs?" And they tried to tell me the idea that man and dinosaur walked at the same time. And I was like, no, they aren't. And I thought back to that archaeologist. I'm like, that guy had proof. You don't have proof for the things that you're telling me. And that's the moment where I was like, this is bullshit. Like, all of this is bullshit. And I think a lot of us have a moment where we can where we can remember, like, yeah, something my parents told me was wrong. Something my elders told me was wrong. And it can be a real world-changing thing when the first time you realize that adults can be wrong.
Yeah. But then what about when you figure out adults are wrong, or that your experience isn't like this holy hellfire thing, and then your best friend in the world is still stuck in the mindset that you were at yesterday?
So that's
what I feel like the Alicent and Rhaenyra relationship is.
Totally. There's a lot of parallels to conservative religious upbringing in this story, both with those with Alicent, also with Criston. We talked about that. Yeah, this is so Tim, my purpose in asking you that was just to know, because Nettles has mentioned she had the religious upbringing. I've mentioned it many times. So I just want to know how much you could relate to this. So very much so is the answer. So that's good, because
I had it to a point that I turned 12 and I really laid it down with when the dinosaur thing happened. I was like, I'm done with this. I'm not going anymore.
So I was raised in Christian school as well as Sunday school. So I was not taught about evolution as anything other than an evil conspiracy to explain away the existence of Jesus until I was out of high school. So congratulations for figuring that out sooner. It took me a little longer. For me, it was Rage Against the Machine and like political philosophy that drove a wedge in between, that caused the thinking to shatter a little bit.
Yeah, I think same, David. I think for me too, it's politics that welded its way into my theology.
But so to bring it back, Rhaenyra's experience going out that night, really, I think one of the reasons why it gripped me was the exact thing you're talking about. It was kind of like the first time you get outside of your protective religious bubble, experience the world in a completely different way without all of the prejudgments that have been put upon you about everything. And you're like, oh, rock and roll music, pretty fun. I don't see any demons. It's just people with music and dancing and maybe a little sex and drugs, which actually aren't as bad as they were saying also. I mean, obviously some drugs, not, better than other drugs, but when you come from the religious upbringing, is just like, that's all bad. Don't touch any of it. There's no discussion to have, and that's obviously a disservice to kids, because crack and marijuana are different and they should be presented differently. Not just all drugs are bad. You lose the nuance when you do the abstinence only messaging. But the point is, that breaking that happens when you lose your faith, when your worldview, the only worldview you've ever had, shatters. And you see things that are different. Like, oh, sex can be pleasurable for the woman. Sex can be outside of wedlock. Sex is something to celebrate. People in some places just have sex with each other and have no shame about it. And it's like those murals that you see, they're not just murals. People actually do that. So that's the other thing I like about the murals is like the picture of what happens in the outside world, but it's not real. And then Rhaenyra sees it in real life, and it's so different. It's so much more like, oh my God, I knew this was existent, but to see it is revolutionary.
No, yeah. No, I feel like Rhaenyra is like going through my 4 years of college. So it's like I told you, being religious and everything. I go through 4 years of college where I'm like enlightened in a whole circle. Like every single thing that could be enlightened to me is fucking enlightened. Then you go back home for Christmas break or Easter break or whatever, and then someone who you love, someone who is important to you, someone who is your Alicent is telling you, forget everything you learned in college, those 4 years, and just go back to being who you were before. That's what I feel like Rhaenyra's journey is like she's getting these impulses where it's like, I have a dragon. I have a mind. I have things. And they're like, no, don't use this because you're just a uterus, right? And so now Rhaenyra's on this other side of where it's kind of like Damon, where I'm like bubbling with this stuff that I can do, my potential.
Damon and Rhaenyra share the blood of the dragon. They are restless and chaotic.
Well, the difference is Rhaenyra is a woman. So she's like forced, of course, to like work within the constraints of being a womb. But it's like, yeah, that's basically what I'm trying to say. Rhaenyra is everything that Damon
if you want to cast this in an even more positive and favorable light, you could say that she spent some time chafing against her responsibilities, chafing against everything that it meant. And we see by the time she rejects Criston and agrees to marry Laenor, she's taken it a lot more seriously. She's absorbed the message of the dagger and of her father, and she's starting to realize, like, yeah, actually, this is a big responsibility, and it requires me to put aside my desires, at least to some extent. So, yeah, I think that is growth for her, and I think that when we come back from 9 years, we should see some sort of integration of these ideas. Like, she still has this dragon energy, the chaotic energy, but she's not Daemon. She has done the political thing to have this marriage and to have kids. We'll get into those kids next week. But yeah, so this is I would say gets into her current conflict, would be harmonizing the thing that led her to independence with also being responsibility. And to go back to the religious metaphor, this is actually really good. This one keeps giving and giving. So when you break away from an oppressive religious environment, there is a strong temptation for the pendulum to swing the other way. You pick up a Christopher Hitchens book, you're like, fuck God, fuck religion, fuck religious people, I'm atheist, everything is materialistic and literal, and it's very much just an overreaction to the oppressive religious presence in your life. Now, hopefully, yes, after a couple years of like working out some of that energy, you swing back to a middle ground and you realize, okay, I actually learned a lot of really solid lessons in Sunday school. I don't need to throw out the baby with the bathwater, okay? But you can start to sort out the dogma from the sort of universal wisdom that you find in most cultures and religions. Then you can heal, reintegrate, all that stuff.
Yeah.
So I would say that with Rhaenyra, we should see some of that. She should have harmonized some of that dragon energy that got her away from the oppression, just like my like fierce rebellion and independence got me out of Christianity, conservative Christianity specifically. But eventually, like, I realized I was clinging to that rebellious energy like a defense mechanism that I didn't need anymore. So eventually I had to learn to let go of some of that energy, and that I wasn't still in a fight for my life anymore here at age 25, right? So anyway.
Yeah, no, it's that happy medium, because like your Christian background, your conservative background, to those of you listening, is not 100% evil, because nothing is. George keeps teaching us over and over the fucking theme of gray, where nothing in this world is 100% evil or 100% good. It's just what you take from it and how it impacts your life. The bad parts of Christianity that have triggered you and have harmed you was a good point for someone else. So, yeah, that's just the fucking world we're living in, and I'm glad that George is writing about it. So, that's how I feel about Alicent. It's just that, like, I can't hate her, I can't love her, because I am her and I have known her, and she will be born 1,000 times after I die.
Yeah.
So how can
And
I hate someone like that?
And I said, like, even when we can blame Otto Hightower for so much and we can hate on Otto Hightower, I still have to concede that I can, like I talked about earlier when we talked about Otto Hightower, I can at least concede that I see where he's coming from and why he's making the moves that he makes.
Cool. Yeah, someone was asking about my age in the chat. Yes, I am 25. That's correct. Thank you, Tim. Thank you for laughing. Yes, that's supposed to be a joke.
I am also 25.
I'm 25 plus another number that's in double digits. Okay, so Thalia says, who would be the ideal team for Rhaenyra's council? I'm trying to think about how to answer that in a non-spoilery way. I don't know if we even can, because when we come back after 9 years, all the pieces are going to be in different positions. So yeah, I thank you for the super chat, but yeah, I can't, Thalia, I don't know how to answer that without getting into. Everyone's 25. Cool. Look at that. Grow up, people.
Grow the fuck up. In a non-spoilery way, I'll say, like, up until now, Rhaenyra's council is herself, her dragon, and Criston Cole. So if Criston Cole is or is not in her corner, that will make a very big difference in her little council. That's all I will say.
Yeah, that's just a question that we can answer a lot better literally after the next episode. We'll see
Right?
what Rhaenyra's team, is and who the valuable allies are and stuff like that. So, all right. Characters that we have not discussed would be.
We haven't gotten to Criston Cole or Corlys.
Okay, so we've done a lot of. Well, let's deal with Criston real quick, because we mostly actually did talk about Criston. His sort of arc and his collapse and stuff like that. I don't know. Is there any thoughts that you have, Tim, that you didn't get
for Criston?
For Criston Cole?
Yeah.
For Criston Cole? Well, I think, like, when we see that moment at the last episode when Alicent comes out to the Grove to sort of, like, save him, I think that's what's going to be the big thing that puts him in her corner. She's going to be like his savior, like, type deal. If we're thinking like the Faith of the Seven, she's going to be the mother and the maiden and all of that for him.
Oh yeah, they were reading off the names of the seven as Criston saw her. Yeah, in that scene. Yeah.
And another thing I was thinking of of Criston Cole beating Joffrey Laudmith to death, and the reasonings for that is there's that blink and you miss it moment where Rhaenyra and Damon do kiss, and I think Criston Cole saw that, and that's like where he realized, like, oh, I was just like a rebound, like she never really loved me, type deal, and then to also know that, like, hey, this Joffrey guy knows. He might be thinking, like, how does he know? Now, we know that Joffrey just used... Joffrey, for his part, is just... He used context clues and kind of pieced it together. Nobody had to tell him. But Criston Cole doesn't know that. So for all Criston Cole knows is people are out there spreading secrets. Well, if only he and Rhaenyra know up to this point, because he doesn't know who's watching behind the walls, then his automatic thought must be Rhaenyra told. And then... So this Joffrey guy knows, and, like, I remember that Varys line of, like, when so many people know it's no longer a secret. And I'm also thinking, too, like, if Joffrey is supposed to be, like, Laenor's sworn protector, and Laenor becomes king consort, then I think there's a very real possibility that had Joffrey lived, that the next time there would have been an opening on the Kingsguard, that Joffrey may have been named to it. It would give reason for why Joffrey is spending so much time with the king consort it gives like plausible deniability why they're always together. But it would also mean Criston Cole would know that there is a second member of the Kingsguard breaking their vows, and like I think like a lot of all of these things like intermingling are the things that set him off. Like I think like when we think of why did Criston Cole do what he did, I think it's a whole eruption of different emotions and different thoughts that were whirling through his head at that time.
Yeah.
Good one.
Yeah, I don't know if I have anything to add. I'm not in my head, but he's, one thing I don't know if you saw the stream I did, Tim, all the way to the end 2 days ago, but I figured out that where Damon and Rhaenyra are when they're about to kiss is about 15 feet away from where the fight happens. It looks like it's in the same place. It's actually not. So it is possible that Criston saw that kiss and set him off. But originally, I was thinking maybe Joffrey or Criston tried to put hands on Damon or Rhaenyra, and that's what started the fight. Doesn't seem so. They're pretty far apart. So I'm wondering if they're going to tell us anything about how that started. But I tend to think that it doesn't matter. The thing that matters is that Criston was boiling over and he was ready to explode. And so whatever happened, he bumped into Joffrey. I mean, they could have literally just walked past each other, shoulder bumped, and he'd be like, what? And that's that. So I don't know that it matters too much.
It doesn't matter why. It just matters what happened, which is Joffrey's dead at the end of it.
Now, I see someone asking about Bloodraven and Daemon. I actually don't see a lot of similarities there. You maybe could say amoral philosophy to some extent or utilitarian philosophy, but they really aren't the same personality. They don't act the same. They don't deal with their problems in the same way. So I don't know if you want to send another message and highlight what the comparison point is. I'm not really seeing much myself, but maybe I'm missing something. I don't know. And okay, so let's get to the Velaryons, and then we can wrap this up. We are 2.5 hours in, so
woo!
Corlys and Rhaenys. Let's talk about Rhaenys first, because Corlys is kind of reacting to Rhaenys. It seems like a lot of Corlys's motivations are tied up in Rhaenys getting passed over. So, who wants to start on Rhaenys?
I'll start. I mean, I kind of just want to start on House Velaryon just for a little bit.
Yeah, that's fine.
Just because, like I told you, like I'm the only one in my friend group and family group who has read the books. So people were like, well, why aren't the Velaryons in the main series? Oh, the Velaryons are a big deal in House of the Dragon, but what about, Game of Thrones? And I kind of had to explain how their power dwindled once the dragons died. There was no need for House Velaryon. Once there were no dragons, it kind of opened up the Targaryens to marrying any house of the realm. Like, if we're not concerned about dragon riding, then we can marry anybody. And when that happened, that's what took House Velaryon's power. That's kind of how I explained it to the people in my life. But Rhaenys, being half Baratheon, half Targaryen, married into the House of Velaryon, just means that she has so much power bubbling in her blood. Now, I kind of just more want to talk about her with Corlys because they're just House Velaryon. Sorry. As a woman in the times, you have to just give up whoever you were and just become 100% into the house of your man. So when I talk about Rhaenys...
Can I interrupt real quick? Because I think that a better way to contextualize that would be to say that Rhaenys and Corlys are the best example of a couple working as a team. And I think that Rhaenys has brought the Targaryen to that house. And so the Corlys-Rhaenys Velaryon house incorporates a lot of Rhaenys' Targaryen energy as well, especially since their kids are dragon riders. So I think that you're right to present them as a unit. But I just want to say that real quick. Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, shit. Rhaenys, I said, Rhaenys is half Baratheon and half Targaryen. That's a lot of fury boiling over. Tim, were you saying something?
I was just saying, not to nitpick though, but Baratheon, it goes overlooked, but Baratheon's an old Valyria house too, since they're coming from Orys Baratheon, who, like most things say, is Aegon the Conqueror's bastard half-brother. So, yeah, it kind of flies under the radar that Baratheon is an old Valyria house too.
Exactly. So when I talk about Rhaenys and Corlys, I'm coming from a place of just I feel like Viserys has been borrowing money from Corlys for at least 10 years. Because he's the richest house in the realm. Imagine
Yeah.
someone is borrowing money from you for 10 years, but not marrying into your family, not showing you the respect that your house deserves. So, like, in what I love about the show is how they're showing Corlys as being like, well, fuck you, bitch. You didn't marry my daughter. I'm not gonna be on the high council for 4 fucking years. For like, I
Yeah.
mean, maybe not 4 years, 2 or 3 years. Corlys does not go to King's Landing. Imagine having a high council seat and then having the balls to not sit in that seat because of a point that you want to prove or whatever it is that's going on. That's how I see House Valerion. Like, bitch, I know I have that high council seat. I know you're not going to fill it up with anyone else. I'm going to sit on Driftmark and show you my might. Like, that's
Now,
how I see House Valerion at this point in time.
now here's something I was thinking. It's just a thought in the back of my mind. Do you think that we will see in any way the Sea Lord, the son of the Sea Lord of Bravos, and that whole thing? Because right now Corlys is in negotiations to wed Laena to the Sea Lord's son. Now, those who know Sea Lord's son. I don't know if it's a spoiler to say, because I honestly don't know if we're going to see him, but I'll just throw it out there. The Sea Lord's son is a bum. Okay.
Yeah, no, I think
he's
this
a
is
bum.
okay to spoil, Tim, because I don't think we're going to see it. No, there's something
Okay,
they're going to
so-
skip over.
All right, so to really quick sum up the Sea Lord's son for people who are curious, this is the think of like the spoiled rich kid's son. Oh, sorry, 1 second. No, I'll take care of it. Sorry, my mom's watching the dogs while I do this, and she's asking if she should feed
Okay,
them.
Tim, let's actually.
Hi,
I want to get back to Rhaenys and Corlys. So try to, if you're going to do this.
I'll save it for the next time. I'll save it for next time to see if maybe we get a little snippet of them or not.
Let's do that. Yeah, because I want to wrap this up. We're at almost 3 hours here. So Rhaenys and Corlys, go ahead.
Oh, okay. Now we're back on.
What are you laughing at? Oh, you're
His
sneezing.
dogs and his mom.
Nothing. There's like 5 things going on at once. It's absolute chaos right now. Okay,
I
Tim.
got family stuff
Rhaenys and
going on.
Corlys.
All right, Rhaenys. So Rhaenys definitely seems to have made peace with the idea that, like, look, I wasn't made queen. I had my chance. There were 2 chances. They both passed me by. But Corlys is still holding a candle to that. And I can understand the idea of wanting to right a wrong that you feel so strongly. And it's actually endearing that he wants to right this wrong for his wife. It shows that, hey, this may have been a political marriage, but it definitely is one of love. Sort of like how Ned and Catelyn didn't know each other, but over the years they grew together. And that's what we see with Rhaenys and Corlys, is that sometimes you come to love one another. But Corlys holding a candle to this right is going to be such a detriment to him. And I don't think he sees it coming. And like I said, like just how Nettles, you had said, like how he's probably loaning money to the crown for years. Like, yeah, I think Corlys putting so much into this, his own money, his own resources, stretching himself thin, is going to be a contributing factor to why House Valerion isn't as prominent anymore when we get to our current story.
Yeah.
So can I real quickly,
yeah.
can I politely and briefly request that we table the conversation about whatever it is, like moral philosophy or whatever it is. It is interesting as a debate, and feel free to continue it in the comments section, but it's kind of taken over the chat. So I will just, again, politely request that we table that one. And I did, if you're interested in that, I did talk about Damon's amoralism in the post-game breakdown last week, because I do believe that they're showing that Daemon has an amoral philosophy, which is different than immoral. It's amoral. But yeah, thanks for the. It's a good debate, but it's pretty tangential to our topic today. So appreciate it, guys. Appreciate the deep thoughts. But yes, there we go.
I kind of want to just piggyback off Tim and what you were saying just about Rhaenys versus Corlys, and I feel like, as a woman, you get to a point where, like, as a woman, as a heterosexual woman, when you're penetrated, you have to accept that things happen to you. Does that make sense?
Okay.
Mhm.
Yep.
Okay.
Like, accepting penetration means accepting that as a woman, sometimes things happen to you. Okay.
I was
So I
waiting to
feel
see
like,
where you're going with this, Nettles. Go ahead.
yes, okay,
Yeah,
cool, cool.
yeah.
So I feel like Rhaenys as a woman has accepted the fact that I'm navigating this. It doesn't matter that I'm a driver, that I'm a dragon rider. It doesn't matter that I'm platinum blonde. Nothing else matters. Like my traits, being kind, being selfish, like none of that matters. It just matters about whether you're a man or a woman. And she's navigating this space as a woman who is someone who's heterosexual, who gives birth. So she's accepted the fact that you have to be penetrated. Cool. Corlys as a man cannot do that. He cannot accept
Okay.
being penetrated.
Because
He
I was
cannot
about to say everybody gets fucked sometimes. Everybody, and in this show in particular, everybody has to accept things they don't like because of responsibility or reality and stuff like that. So I believe your point is that Rhaenys has accepted this and Corlys has not, correct? And that does seem to be the case, yes.
And it's kind of like a man and woman dichotomy, because like
You
I
led us
said,
through the woods there, Nettles, but you brought us out, I think. Okay, go ahead.
yeah, where it's like exactly like you're saying, like everybody gets fucked. Man, woman, race, religion, whatever, you get fucked. But women in this world, medieval times, 2022, are led to believe that you have to accept it. And how you accept it determines your worth as a woman. So
That's
Rhaenys
definitely a fair observation, yeah.
Rhaenys is at that point where she's accepted that, like, no man will ever follow me. She tries to tell Rhaenyra, we know the outcome, but we don't, whatever can happen. So she's tried to help Rhaenyra. She's tried to navigate her own life, and she's in this place of acceptance. Like, well, now I'm older. Now I have kids. Now
Oh,
Oh.
am I
oh, hang
stuck?
on, Nettles. Hang on. You're freezing.
I'm good now, though, right?
Okay,
I'm
yeah.
good now.
Last 10 seconds.
Yeah,
Come again.
The last sentence you said got cut off.
I'm just saying that Rhaenys as a woman can accept things better than a man, Corlys, can as a man. Every single slight that has happened on Rhaenys' house and on House Valerion has hurt Corlys to the bone. But Rhaenys can just kind of like brush it off. Because women, whether in medieval society or 2022 society, we have to just brush it off and just keep going. Just keep doing your makeup, keep curling your hair, keep smiling. It's fine. But men don't have to do that. Men, if someone steps on your shoe in the club, you can punch him until he dies. If a man, like, you know what I mean? Like, it's
Right, and
different
there's
ways.
its own consequences for that too, but it has to do with like how the different genders are taught to respond to problems. It gets back to what we were saying before, where men are essentially taught to repress the emotions and present this armored knight exterior, and women are dealing with their emotions but also suppressing them, things like that. So yes, that's
Or accepting. Yeah.
right. And so it's a good point. And I think that if you look at Rhaenys being forced to accept everything that's happened to her, there is a little bit of bitterness in a lot of her comments. And it's not like hot, like fresh open wound bitterness, but it's just sort of like, yeah, I've been there. I've taken this ride. I know how this story ends. So it's not like angsty, but it's like a little bit like, yeah, it's very,
Acceptance.
I've been around, I've done this before. So the contrast between her and Rhaenyra is, it's presented to us starkly in the first couple episodes in the conversations between Rhaenyra and Rhaenys. So we're meant to notice this difference in how they're looking at essentially the same problem. Rhaenyra is just a rerun of Rhaenys in so many ways as far as the political situation, but we're doing it differently this time. And so Rhaenys is a little bitter about that. She's a little like, yeah, you think you're going to do it differently. I tried and I failed, so you can't do it, because that makes me feel like maybe I could have done something different. So underneath of there, when you dig under the layers, you do find a little bit of vulnerability with Rhaenys, because she's she is a little bit threatened by the idea of Rhaenyra, tempting, doing something that she couldn't. But I think more in the last couple episodes, we see, of course, that Rhaenys is concerned about her kids. And so she is very much, we're putting our son in danger. Viserys was weak to come here. Rhaenyra's claim will be challenged. She's got a pretty realistic take on all this stuff. And some of it is, again, laced with the burnt feelings of the past. But mostly she's seeing this in a clear-eyed fashion. And that's why Corlys listens to her and Corlys respects her, is because he knows what kind of political acumen she has. And you also see Laenor has been listening to his mom, right? With Joffrey's, the courts will be great, the feasts. And Laenor is clearly thinking more about the danger of the situation because Rhaenys has obviously imparted that to him. So I like that touch. And I like Rhaenys' presence in the family. You can feel it with every family member. So,
yeah.
And certainly Laena, when we see Laena's youth and exuberance and ballsiness, like I said, when the fight broke out, she made a beeline for the action to go protect her brother. You can see her weaving through the crowd, shouldering people aside. She's trying to go help her brother. So that's the kind of thing that Rhaenys would have done. You know what I mean? And as we see more of Laena, we'll probably see more of that Rhaenys spirit as well. So I love the family. I think it makes sense as a family. And just to rip on Lord of the Rings a little more, which I've completely turned against. I liked the first few episodes, but I'm out after that last one. The casting
so dry.
It's boring, man. It's boring. And the casting isn't, none of the families look like families. They just don't.
What story are they telling?
Well,
does anyone know?
There's a whole can of worms here, but my point was just that, like, on House of the Dragon, the casting is so detailed. We're about to meet Alicent's kids. They look like Alicent. They really do. So it makes it a lot more immersive when the casting is done well and people look like the children of the people they're supposed to. Lord of the Rings is just like, it's so off the map. Like brother, sister, father, all three look different. It's killing me.
Hobbits, elves, it's a lot. I'm not giving up on it, but it's a lot.
That's same. Yeah. I'm keeping open the possibility they could do stuff that I like. But anyway, I don't want to get derailed too much.
Whatever. I'm probably going to wait until week 10 and just watch everything else. I'll just watch everything at once.
Yeah, maybe.
It's not House of the Dragon where I have a week's worth of material to talk about.
But the point was to praise House of the Dragon. The casting is good. The families are good. And not only the casting, but like the way that people act. Like I said, Laena feels like she could be Rhaenys' daughter. And you can see that Laenor has the same mindset as Rhaenys. He's picked it up from his mom. He's a little more cautious. So, yeah, I like all that stuff. And the sea snake's boldness is also something you can see as well. But, Laenor is pretty bold. He's bold in war. And he's bold in the court scene. He's not nervous. He doesn't shrink from the moment. He's rolling in with a pretty complicated situation. He's a gay man with a boyfriend who's marrying the princess, and he owns it. So he's no shrinking violet either. So there was a super chat earlier that asked how the story would change if Laenor wasn't gay. Well, obviously some of the plots that have to do with his boyfriends might be different, but they could just be the same plots with a girlfriend. It ultimately, like, I don't know that it matters a whole lot, the gender of the partner. Like, his romantic relationships affect the story. And there's a lot of, like, the fact that he's gay makes it obvious that his marriage to Rhaenyra is political, but that doesn't need to be the case either. Like, there's lots of political marriages, and all that matters is that they're not in love. They don't lust for each other. They are their friends. And that's really all that matters. So I think it matters in the sense that, like, that's part of who Laenor is, but they're basically just being treated as romantic relationships the same as any other, from what I can see.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think that it would change the story too much if Laenor was not gay, because there are heterosexual people who aren't attracted to each other.
And lots of people have secrets. So
yeah. Just because you're not gay doesn't mean that I'm going to be attracted to you. So it could still be the same exact story with Laenor being heterosexual.
Right. And my point was just that, like, Rhaenyra has a secret. She slept with Criston Cole. Criston Cole has a secret. Okay. Laenor has a secret. So different secrets, but everybody's got stuff that can be exploited by other political rivals and stuff like that. So
Exactly.
I think it matters, but it's not, it's one of several, like everybody has personal complications and things. And that's in this medieval society. That's what Laenor has to deal with. That's a little extra complicated. So.
Okay, so we talked about Viserys, Damon, Alicent and Rhaenyra,
Otto, the Strongs.
Otto, the
Strongs.
Strong, House
Criston
of
Cole.
Valerion, and Criston Cole. Did we
And I
leave
think
anyone out?
one thing that I will say about Corlys is that when we started off, he was very aggrieved. He had this big problem with the stepstones, and Otto was shutting him out.
Yes.
Now he's in a little better situation. Otto's gone. His son is married to Rhaenyra. The stepstones
Yes.
matter is settled. Viserys came groveling to him. And so he's probably thinking that he's in pretty good shape right now, as opposed to the beginning of the episode. So we'll have to see how that goes. But I would imagine that Corlys is riding pretty high. We'll just,
I agree.
there's so much more to say, but we'll just have to wait for more episodes so that we can see what the new controversies are going to be. But,
Yeah.
all right, so I
if-
think
if
that's
you-
pretty much all. Do we want to? Mysaria, she got a promo picture, so I guess she's a main character.
Fuck
the-
her.
The main thing, the main thing about
I was
Mysaria seems to be that she started off looking for agency and trying to find that through Damon. Now, Damon turned out to be unreliable and untrustworthy, and so she's made something of herself now in King's Landing. So that's really all we know. We've only seen those two kind of notes in her story, but that still is an interesting arc because she has now risen in power on her own, by her own means. And so she is now, like Larry Strong, a different kind of rumor monger. She's one who operates outside of the Red Keep instead of inside the Red Keep. But it's good to
Okay.
have these sort of people around in King's Landing because rumor mongers make plots turn and move. So Mysaria will continue to be involved in this story pretty much through the end. Yeah, she's now a lot more powerful and dangerous than she was before even. So, girl, come here. Yeah, she's now the White Worm. Like, now she's fully Mysaria, the White Worm, whereas before she was still becoming that. So I think that's essentially the arc they gave her, is that we saw her before she stepped into her full Fire and Blood role, and now she's kind of there. So
Yeah, it's the story of the self-made person, so self-made woman here, but the self-made person that Otto Hightower thinks he is, the one who really had to carve out and grab everything they have because they have absolutely no fallback. Like, at least Otto Hightower can always go back to Old Town and be rich. Mysaria doesn't. Mysaria really is the I had to claw and scrape my way to get here story.
And I want to say that although I know a lot of people in the fandom find Mysaria's accent abrasive, the actress who plays her is actually British. Like, she talks like this. Like, so that accent that she's doing is really a choice. Because at first I thought that, like, that's just how she spoke English, that she, whatever, broken English or whatever. But I didn't know that the actress was British. So it's like Mysaria's characterization is fully fleshed out by the director and the writers because they put
So I
someone
guess-
British in that role.
So is
Yeah,
that what
I-
they think that Lysini accents are going to be? I
Well-
guess if we get more Lysini characters.
well, it seems like Mysaria sounds similar to some of the SOC stuff. Yeah, Shay, right?
yeah.
I forget how Talisa sounded. Rob Stark's invented.
Talisa was actually just regular British, like nothing,
Okay, yeah,
nothing really taken away from that.
yeah.
I mean, Triarchy is still kicking, so we could see some more Lysini characters in the future.
Cool. So I will say put a last call to the chat for comments. We could treat the Maesters as a character, but there's not really an arc there. They're just there being sinister, and we've keeping an eye on them. They're plotting. Yeah. So
Bill
that's
Nye the Science Guy.
what's that?
Bill Nye the Science Guy. I mean, Maesters, they could be one characterization because they have the same goal sometimes.
I think they're a little more than Bill Nye the Science Guy, but It's like half Bill Nye, half Illuminati.
Okay.
Half very bad healthcare system. So yeah, like I said, super chat. No, I thought I got them all. Let me go back. I'll just see if there's any I missed. I thought I got them all. Oh, Sid said, my theory why Criston went bonkers on Joff was that he saw the kiss and wanted to kill Damon, then realized he couldn't without being killed right after. I do think I mentioned that too, that like he took out his anger on Joffrey because he potentially couldn't on Damon.
Yeah. I think that was one of the points I was getting at too when I said about Joffrey Longmouth. It's like Joffrey Longmouth was also a target of convenience to take rage out on.
Right, because they're just not a major house, and he doesn't really have any support there other than the Valerians. Okay, so... Yeah, I think I've gotten all the other super chats. Minty, is there any that I missed?
Yeah.
Oh, Connor, here. Do you think that Otto is motivated by personal power and family, or by a secret commitment to the Maester conspiracy? He comes across as scheming, but could it be for a higher cause? No, I think Otto would be a dupe. And this is what I thought in the original Maester conspiracy, is that he doesn't know the whole conspiracy. It would be, the people that would be orchestrating the conspiracy would be the Grand Maesters. Potentially the Lord of Hightower, but it really starts with the Maesters. And I think that they're taking advantage of Hightower's ambition to forward their own conspiracy, if there is a larger conspiracy. That's how I see it.
I agree.
Very good. And
hit that like button, fools.
thank you. Now Hobart, Hobart could be in on higher goals that he isn't telling Otto about. I definitely think Hobart is capable of treating Otto like an underling like that. I think that would make sense. Let's see here.
Definitely. I mean, he's the one out there committing open treason by shouting Aegon II, the Conqueror, babe.
I mean, I tried to tell King Viserys it was more than just Otto, but he was just very focused on Otto not being innocent, and that was, his thing. So
yeah. But with the Hightowers, like how I'd said, the making and breaking in houses in House Valerion falling for prominence, the same sort of holds true for House Hightower. Like, they're also not a big... They only get a couple of mentions in the main books, like we get Lord Leighton up and his Mad Maid, but it's really, it's not the Hightowers that make Old Town, it's Old Town that makes the Hightowers. It's that type of deal. Like, the Hightowers are important because Old Town is important.
And I think there's some mutual, like the Hightowers have a certain amount of power the Citadel needs. So at certain points, the Hightowers may have some leverage over the Citadel. But ultimately, the Citadel is where a long-running plan can be kept alive, because it's held together by a few people. One person dies, another person comes into the conspiracy. The conspiracy can run over a long amount of time. Whereas with the Hightowers, each new lord might be of a different mindset. So the Citadel always has to be able to have its own power. They're not dependent on the Hightowers completely. So I think it's probably a complex relationship. And I think we are going to go to Old Town on this show, right? Are we going to see Old Town? Does anyone know?
I would hope so.
I hope that we light the way would have meant we went to Old Town, but we didn't.
Well, the fact that we've seen Hobart makes me think that it's not just Otto and Alicent. They're going to develop the entire plot line. Even if we don't go to Old Town, we will at least, we're going to understand what their motivations are eventually.
Because, I mean, in the preview for the next episode, Lytle Strong is still hand of the king, and Otto Hightower has to go somewhere, unless Otto Hightower is just not going to be in the episode for next. I mean, that's also a possibility.
Yeah. I just want to say, Second Sons don't have it as bad as we're making it seem. Because the First Sons inherit a fucking castle. A castle doesn't have 1 rooms. It doesn't have 2 rooms. It doesn't have 3 or 4 or 5 or 6. It has dozens and dozens of rooms.
Yeah.
So although the Second Sons do have to carve out their own way, but when they do fail, when they come back, they do come back to a castle.
Yeah. Yeah, the Second Son mindset is more of envy, really, than anything.
I'm sorry, what was that, Tim?
That
He's
it's
saying
more,
the
it's
second
envy.
son
It's envy
mindset.
because that second son's envy their older brothers because they're not the Lord. They don't get the title. They get all the amenities, but they don't get the title, and that's really what's like irks them the most.
I
I'm
think that
firstborn.
I
No,
think that
I'm firstborn, and my sister's thirdborn, and she tells me she has never envied my position. 'Cause
yeah,
she
I don't.
hates the
I want to push
responsibility.
back against that, Tim. I don't think that's the right way to characterize the second son syndrome. I think it's more about the comparison between privilege and not privilege. Like the firstborn has a privilege, the secondborn does not, and so that creates a chip on the shoulder kind of attitude. And sometimes that can spiral into jealousy, but a lot of times it works out as like more of a need to prove yourself. And so your second son might end up actually more qualified by the time they reach adulthood because they've been out there cutting their teeth on the stepstones instead of living life
Yeah.
in court. So
Yeah, it's
Exactly.
yeah, it
Yeah,
can
I'm not
go
applying-
it can go the jealousy route, but more before that, I think it's just the basic unevenness of the situation and the idea that
Yeah.
like you've got more to prove than your older sibling. So
Yeah, it doesn't apply to all second sons. I was just painting with broad strokes.
yeah, right on.
Well, I get it. Yeah, it's just because I'm a firstborn, so I just get defensive because I'm like, bitch. But no, I definitely get what you're saying, painting the broad strokes. I mean, the firstborns, yeah, you really do get everything. You don't have to be smart. You don't have to be pretty. You just have to be born first, and you get a
You
whole
just gotta
fucking.
be born first and live long enough.
Because like look at Corlys. Corlys tries to appeal to Damon with the second son theme of like people
Right.
who weren't given anything and had to work their way up. So Corlys has turned that chip on his shoulder into motivation, into a strength, to where he's achieved all these things because he felt like he had to. So Rhaenys still has to put him in check sometimes, but for the most part, Corlys has used that chip on his shoulder pretty successfully. So let's go ahead and leave it here. I would like to shout out another streamer who's just started streaming. It's a really cool channel that not a lot of people belong to. It's called Feyfire, Fey space fire. They just started streaming. They are big into Arthurian mythology. Also, I found them through Raised by Wolves. They do really good Raised by Wolves content if you watch that show. But they're streaming now about House of the Dragon. So after you're done with the channel here, I'll drop the link. Go over to their stream and tell them I said hello. And they'll get a little bump and they'll appreciate that. So I always like to shout out content creators like the two people next to me that deserve more subs. So Girl Nettles, you've been doing content on both your channel and also your friend's channel. So shout out your channel and her channel.
Oh yeah, Westeros and Chill.
That's it.
Westeros and Chill. Like, yeah, she's a zoologist, and she is really big into reptiles and snakes. So she can tell you how dragons actually act versus what they're doing on the show. I've been doing stuff on her channel, my channel, which is just regular people getting drunk and talking about Westeros history and stuff like that. But yeah,
I dropped into the last stream you did. It was pretty topical. You guys were actually handling a lot of serious stuff while you were drinking and talking shit. So I was pretty entertained. So definitely go check out Girl Nettles' stream if you like the Girl Nettles energy, and Westeros and Chill as well. You can just look them up by name. They're really cool. I've been talking to them a little bit lately. Good folks. And then of course GreyWasteTimand, as you know, bringing a lot of stuff on A Song of Ice and Fire. That really helps you understand where George is coming from, particularly with, I always say Lovecraftian, but it's so much more than just Lovecraft, Tim. So mention a little bit about what you're doing on your channel and tell the good people to come over there.
Yeah, my channel, a lot of it has been Lovecraft and A Song of Ice and Fire, but it also is Lovecraft contemporaries because George borrowed a lot from the writers that he loved growing up. So Lovecraft, Chambers, Bierce, Robert E. Howard. And I also do a lot of stuff focusing on the Far East. The stuff, everything past the Bones and the Five Forts is my jam. That's why I'm super excited for Yi T's show to get off the ground. I'm really excited to see where they go with that. And
Tim, I didn't even put that together. That's gonna be you, man.
Oh, if they do modern ET with the yellow sorcerer lord and the orange emperor, I was like, I'm gonna have so much to say.
Well, fingers crossed for you, buddy. So guys, those are the channels, and of course the links to their channels are in the description as well. So go check out Fire, like I said, if you want some more House of the Dragon content. And I will see you tomorrow night after the stream to answer your super chats and be your humble servant. So that's it, guys. Thanks for tuning in. Thank you, Tim and Nuddles, for coming on, getting some Triarchy action here on this fine Saturday. And I'll see y'all later. Have a good weekend.
Bye, guys.